And we are live. Hello, everyone. So we have to start every live stream.
Yeah.
That's like the only dose of enthusiasm you get. Then it's just downhill from there.
Gotta start strong.
Yeah, exactly. As usual, chat. Good to see everybody. Good to see familiar names in chat. Let us know how the audio levels are. You guys are the producers of the show for now.
Yeah.
Still. Hey, Rob. Good to see you. Um, and just before we get going here, we got a number of topics to get to, but we did also want to make this a little bit of a palate cleanser from some of the more technical deep dives that we've done in
Yeah.
recent times. I mean, we'll still definitely do that because, of course, we will.
Yeah, we are
But
nerds. There's no
yeah,
stopping that. But we
but
would we would like to ease up on that kind of stuff a little
yeah,
bit.
make
Make it
things
a
a
little
little bit more,
more
yeah,
inclusive, a
accessible.
little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have with me here, of
That's
course, the great. I don't know what you would call yourself. Uh,
Griffin. Griffin is my name.
the Great Griffin? No. I have here the great community figurehead listener who has done a lot of work. You've done a lot of work. You got called out on Headfire recently, so that was fun. Uh, um, hello, Richard. Nice
Let's
to
do
see you.
the stream gang ping real
Um,
quick for all the
just
Discord
as we
people.
get going here, I do want to also remind folks that all of this, everything we do here, the channel, the live streams, etc., it's all made possible by headphones.com. Check out headphones.com for all the things. That's where we post our articles. That's where you can buy headphones, should you be so interested. You do not have to, of course, but check out the site and just see what we have going on there. Other than that, I think we could just sort of launch right in and
Sounds good.
talk about the topics. So we do have a number of topics, but as is in the title of the stream, we want to cover some products. We'll talk about the 490 Pro, which is what I'm wearing here. But why don't you start off with the TruthEar Gate and some of the ones that you've heard recently. So the TruthEar Gate, the
Yeah.
Symphonium Titan, and the Theaudio Hype 4, the latter two of which are ones that I've already covered on the live stream in the past.
Right. So I am actually wearing a gate right now. I have
Well, first, what
the
what is the Gate for folks who are maybe not familiar?
So the Gate is basically Truthier's successor to the Ola. Their kind of introductory $20 ultra cheap wired IEM single dynamic driver. Um, Truthier was nice enough to send me two different versions. They sent me the white one, which I have right here and I'm wearing, which came with the mic cable, and then they sent me a black version as well, and I did measure them both. They measure basically identically, no issues there. Um, I do just prefer the look of the white version, so that's what I've elected to use for, you know, the last few days since I've had it. Um, and it is an interesting one. So, obvious comparison point is going to be to the Truthier Hola, which is, the predecessor to this IEM. And I think when it comes right down to it, I do prefer the Hola, but I think a lot of people are also going to compare it to this, the original Salnotes Truthier Zero, um, because this was, obviously the Moondrop True 2 kind of really ushered in the ultra cheap budget IEM trend. But I feel like the Salnote Zero was the one where like really kicked off huge because it had a removable cable, had a better accessories package than the Chew for that reason. But
Still
still
awful
had
shell ergonomics.
yes. So this is where I think the Hola really improved from like this stage of like ultra cheap IEMs when that it was a lot more comfortable. The cable was incredible versus the Cellnote Zero's very mid cable. Honestly, it's probably just straight up a bad cable. On the original, at least I haven't tried the Zero
For a
2.
lot of these ultra cheap stuff, that's common.
Yeah, but it also had better tips as well.
Mm.
And interestingly, and this is just talking about the accessories. So you do get a white version of the lauded, loved Hola cable, which is very cool. When you buy the white version, you can get it with a mic or without. They just sent it with a mic, so I had one with a mic and one without to test both. Um, but I actually really like the tips that the gate comes with. It comes with a narrow bore tip. I don't have around me, but it's like a generic clear narrow bore tip, and then it comes with a wide bore kind of like shorter tip, which reminds me of the coffee tips actually.
Oh,
It actually straight up, like as far as I can tell, just is the coffee tip. But like the clear version, which they also sell. Um, so I mean, the comfort for me with this has been exceptional. Huge pluses, even over the Ola, where I feel like I don't know if it's the material of the shell being like a rougher kind of unfinished resin on the Hola, but it wasn't quite as nice in my ear. Yeah.
put that back in the
Yeah,
garbage where it belongs.
I'm sorry they don't work for you, man. They work great for me. They make basically everything more comfortable, and they
Okay.
tend to have an effect on the treble that I like as well. But getting to the sound of the gate, I would say it's actually somewhere in between the Ola and the original Sound Note Zero. So it's a little bit brighter in like the kind of Harman region, like the 3 to 8 kilohertz area than the original Ola. So it's got a little more heat there, a little bit more grittiness and kind of texture up there, but not quite as much as this. So it's not immediately annoying. I actually do think my review on this IEM is going to end up being pretty positive because the treble is actually one of the things I feel like it does pretty well. Um,
Right.
and I think the main thing having to do with that is there's with single dynamic drivers you usually get like a peak somewhere in the like 11 to 12K neighborhood, like on every single dynamic driver IEM I've tried, at least you get something in that neighborhood. Um, it seems like with the gate, what they've done is pushed that up in frequency a little bit and lowered the overall magnitude of that region. So like you still get a peak, but instead of being in like the 12K area that tends to bother me a lot, it's pushed up towards 13K, and for some reason it just doesn't bother me as much. Um, that
Sorry.
part's great.
Some folks are saying the levels are too quiet. Let me know how it is now. Is it still too quiet?
I can go up for sure, but
No, I can. Better if I adjusted here. Like levels look fine on my end. I just don't want to clip. So that's all. Okay. Continue.
But yeah, so that's the treble. The mids are unfortunately a little bit less warm than the Ola. I actually thought the Ola was kind of unique in how it's a slightly warmer approach to mid-range versus a lot of its contemporaries at the time was a refreshing thing for the single dynamic driver ultra cheap market. And unfortunately, the gate is a little bit thinner, a little bit shoutier, a little bit colder, a little bit more nasally, honky, all that stuff. So I can't listen to it at a volume that I would prefer to listen to my IEMs at. So it's also just a little bit weightless. Like when people think of dynamic driver IEMs, they tend to think of something a little bit, heavier and thicker in the note weight, and this really doesn't do that. It's a pretty light, quick
But
presentation.
we're talking like stereotypical kind of Harmon-ish like response. Is that sort of, or would you say?
Yeah,
It's
that
sort of,
kind of like Harmon-ish with a little bit more lower mids type response.
okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think it's a signature that most people are going to have issues with. Me personally, it's just a little bit on the cold and shouty side.
Right.
Like I think you would have similar complaints, but I think a lot of the people who are down with like an Aria or a Kato or something like that are gonna have plenty to like here. And importantly, like in my opinion, the looks are fantastic. I love the new shell design with the clear faceplate. It's been pretty polarizing in the community from what I've seen. A lot of people think it looks way cheaper, but I really like it. Um, the ergonomics are, as said, great. The accessories package is pretty much the best I've seen at this price range, and the price is fantastic. So, like, if we're grading it on if like price, looks, sound quality, build, and accessories are like 5 stars, like this is actually 4 out of 5. It just depends on how highly you rate the sound quality in that evaluation.
Right.
So it's a pretty damn well-rounded package. I just wish it wasn't quite as cold.
If you were to compare, or maybe you did already, I missed it, but if you were to compare with the Soundnotes 02.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Okay, 01 then.
It's basically just a better version of 01.
Okay.
So it's like it's similarly lightweight, kinda, but the treble is a lot smoother in my ear.
My AC is lo-fi. Yeah, if you guys can hear like a background hiss for me, that's my AC for sure. Because it's
also
on.
Be mine. I have a fan going over there.
It's bloody well hot here. Summer is the worst time of year. Summer is only tolerable at night.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Okay, so you think, for this, okay, basically this is Hola Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, but not as good. That's sort of the theme that I've been seeing about it, but would you say that that's accurate, or would you say it is actually, genuinely better?
I would say it depends on the approach of the listener. If they're the kind that prefers quote unquote technical performance or impressive subjective aspects, I do find the bass of the gate to be snappier, more punchy,
okay,
and more distinct. That was a lot of people's complaint with Hola. That was kind of like a fluffy mud fest down there. So I think the bass is better on gate. I do prefer the mid-range of the Hola, as I said, and I actually do prefer the treble of the gate above like 6K or so.
So if somebody just handed you both and said pick one, you would still choose the gate?
I probably would choose the gate.
Okay.
It would depend on what I'm doing though, and it would depend on how long I'm listening, how loud I need to be listening. Like if I'm going on a commute, I would take the Hola because it's extra bass and warmth would be better at the higher volumes I would need to overcome, like a subway or something like that. But if I'm just chilling at home, I probably would end up going for gate. Yeah.
See, what I'm wondering is how many gates can you fit inside a speaker stand to make it more audiophile? Instead of filling it with sand, you fill it with TruthEar Gate IEM.
Dude, you've lost me, but I would assume it's a pretty big number. They're pretty small.
See, that's what the real audiophiles do.
Clearly.
No, I mean, like I was just kind of. To me, it's just funny, like we're talking about a $20 IEM. I was going to say $20 sure is a lot of money for some people to spend.
Yeah, I mean it's not, and like that's a huge part of why I would recommend it at all, is that it is very inexpensive, and honestly, just like the white cable that you get is worth the $20 in my opinion. I don't love that the mic, just out of necessity, the mic cable doesn't have a chin cinch because it would only come up to here, but that's a nitpick. It's still like the best, like ultra cheap included cable with any IEM that I've seen, at least.
Waffles, what are you talking about? That's like literally all we talk about. It's the cheap stuff. Actually, that's not true anymore. But for a while, it was all we would talk about because that's where the interesting stuff was. Like the 02, for example, also being $20. And we have a video coming out.
This doesn't have the ergonomic issues, though.
Yeah. No, we have a video coming out tomorrow on a headphone that is $69. Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know if it's any good though. Have to wait for the
we'll
see about that. But actually, I mean, that's the thing is like if you can only spend $20 on an audio product, or even $100 on an audio product, there's so many IEMs that are worth getting over headphones because you can just do so much more with IEMs at that price point.
Yes.
Cheaper to make.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, just straight up cheap headphones just don't do bass.
Someone says, I do wish there were more interesting tunings in these cheap IEMs. I agree, and I think that's the next, like, we'll see what happens with this new trend, right? For some of the ones that are around like the $300 to $500 price range. If that picks up steam, I do think we'll start to see that trickle down into the more budget segment, because it's very clear from everything that we've seen, from how products are received, anecdotally, to also like the recent research that's been done from Sean, that it's very clear there are two seemingly dominant segments as far as like, the types of sound signatures that people prefer, and they are different enough that this, one person likely won't enjoy both similarly. Like one, any person would have a strong preference for one or the other. So I can see this being something that, especially, the Chinese manufacturers say, hey, this is an untapped potential in the market for us to really capitalize on. Plus, the other nice thing about that sort of trickle down effect is it's a new selling point for the flavor of the month type stuff. So as much as we kind of like harp on the flavor of the month stuff being kind of like, it's kind of weird, especially for people who are new and they're not like in the communities about this. There's a benefit to everybody when that stuff starts to become more ubiquitous. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
Let you continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, perhaps obviously I agree with basically everything you said. But yeah, to Mitch RT's point, I think there are some hurdles that need to be overcome acoustically for that to happen in kind of the cheaper IEM space. I think cheaper IEMs have up to now historically been like, at least the ones that people pay attention to, like in the $20 to $30 space, have generally been like single DD IEMs. And it's pretty hard to get the new meta mid-range at that price with dynamic drivers that are available, as far as I'm aware.
Mm-hmm.
I've only really seen sets with that kind of curve in the mid-range typically come from sets that use a BA in the mid-range, and it's usually one of 2 or 3 BAs.
Well, we'll see. I mean, if history has told us anything, is that if you start doing things at scale, it starts to become a lot more affordable to produce, and I think that they will be able to do that. I'm thinking also more like sub $100, not necessarily the like ultra budget, $20 stuff. Certainly sub $100 is doable.
Yeah, I would call like under $100 safely budget, and then maybe like under like 150 still technically budget. Once you get under that, or once you get over that, it's you're kind of just playing in mid-fi. But yeah, do you want me to talk about another IEM, or do you want to talk about the headphone?
Let's get your thoughts on the Titan and the Hype 4 as well.
Okay, so
going to the high end here.
Yeah, just right into the high end.
How much is that?
I think we have it at $1,000 right now. I don't know if that's MSRP or sale price, but we checked the site the other day. I don't like this IEM.
Taryn is somewhere crying. He loves
it. Taryn will have to cope. I understand why he likes it. It does have like a metric ton of bass, and it's not crazy like mid bass or lower mid or anything like that. It's very much so just sub bass. Mm-hmm. I just don't think I would have tuned any part of an IEM to the way that they tuned this. Like I generally like a way more reasonable, like still maybe slightly emphasized, but like more reasonable bass response, more low mid range, less upper mid range, less lower treble, less upper treble.
Yes. I had basically the same things to say about it. I was like,
it's just everything sounded weird with it. And I don't know, maybe it's that I'm not as huge of an EDM listener as some people. Like I do listen to electronic music, and I do listen to like pop music that, has very bass forward production. But yeah, I just really couldn't get past how it made vocals and snare drums sound.
You know what's funny about the Titan? Well, okay, it raises an interesting question, I think, which is that like you and I will look at the Titan's response. We listen to it, we know as well. Like I said basically the same things about it. When you look at a response like that as well, you think like, okay, if you just bracket everything like 200 hertz and down and just imagine that doesn't exist, and you look at the response and you go, yeah, that's not something that I'm going to enjoy. However, if you include that bass, it's the rest of it's kind of like Harman, right? Like it's kind of like Harman IE, just with like a fuckload of bass.
Yeah, and like, so to be fair, I actually think you need to tune your mid-range and treble like that when you have that much bass.
Yeah.
It's just I would never put that much bass.
Exactly.
And
So,
like on music where like that bass isn't particularly well tokened, like if the fundamentals of the bass instrument are higher, like in an older rock song or something like that, it just sounds thin because it's not, you're not really getting like
it's tapering off before that rise.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose this raises the question. It doesn't beg the question. People always say it raises the question. Use language properly. Begging the question is a different thing. Sorry, that's a different hobby horse for me. It raises the question of do you think that it's possible to tune something to a population average type response, or like and I know that there's some question marks currently about JM1 because we're currently developing the next iteration of that, or like we're doing some work with that. But like say like you had like DUS default DSP mids and treble apart from the upper treble, right? And say you had that. Do you think there is a way to keep the good things about that tonality intact while also presenting a massive bass shelf? And I say this in recognition of like the Da Vinci, I think kind of tried to do that and failed. Like I think it was
I don't think it's quite gigabass. Like
it's not
in the
quite
way that the Titan is.
No.
I don't really think they're in the same discussion, but I get what you mean. Where like, can you have the good stuff while also having more bass than neutral?
I don't know if you were as critical about this, but I was certainly critical of the bass overshadowing the good parts about that IEM, and I think actually Mr. Super was critical of that same thing. So he and I kind of both had a similar perspective on it, that like, yes, the mid-range is fantastic, but you can't really tell how good it is because the bass is kind of dominating there. And I'm wondering like, what's the solution for bass heads who want to try that tuning?
So to answer like the overarching question of can you have the good stuff while also having gigabass?
Yeah.
In my opinion, no. There has to be some compromise, and you can choose the right compromises that compromise the least and, kind of min-max the performance. It's not a perfect example because I think it still has flaws, but it's, in my opinion, a lot better than the Titan. The Nightjar Singularity.
Someone else is mentioning it in the chat as well. So.
Yeah, I greatly prefer that IEM, and I'll tell you why. It has a similar kind of gigabass in terms of like the same amount at 20 hertz or whatever, but it isn't as contoured in its bass shelf, so it does kind of have a little bit more in the 200 hertz region, which isn't necessarily the part I would say is good. Its big brother, the Duality, which isn't out yet but will be out, contours that area more like Titan. But it has Singularity, has a forward 1 to 2K region, almost like a Gate or an Aria or a Cell Node 0 or something like that, where it is like a single dynamic driver. So it has that kind of early rise. And to me, that early rise has only ever made sense with an IEM with gigabass.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the things like the Aria and the Gate and the Sound Notes here, like all the cheap DDs have too much honk in that region for me personally, no matter what. Mm-hmm. But once you pair that with gigabass, they actually serve as really good balancing forces.
Right.
Because that area is really where a lot of like bass texture and like plucked overtones will be for like lower end instruments, as well as like kind of like the vocalness of pianos and stuff like that. So once you have like a butt ton of low mids and bass, those two kind of do counterbalance a little bit. And what Singularity does that Titan doesn't is it's like really relaxed in the treble. It's basically like JM1 or something like that in the treble.
Right.
There's still a single DD peak somewhere in the like 11 to 12K region, but there's so much bass you barely notice that.
I just want to apologize for listeners' camera that keeps roboting out. He is actually
Yeah, I'm
from.
sorry, guys.
He's from the past. He's from the '80s, and so
Yeah.
that's why we're getting this kind of somewhat pixelated and choppy presentation on his end. But we'll work towards bringing him to the future soon.
Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Have you, by any chance, heard the Dunu Glacier?
I did. That's an interesting one that I feel like we should talk about, actually. This is something that we have in the docket for later discussion, actually. It's the third topic. I don't know if you have it up, but I would like to mention it then rather than now, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay. I like your phrasing of that topic. All right.
Okay, cool. So we'll touch on that a little later.
I just, in the context of basshead IEMs, that's one that sort of stands out to me as being like, yeah, I get it. But anyways, yeah.
Bass on that one's fun.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Hype 4 from TheAudio. I've been on record as saying this is one of my current go-to recommendations for IEMs that have fantastic mid-range.
Yeah, man. I was pretty surprised by Hype 4, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I knew you liked it, I knew Caleb liked it. I thought the treble was gonna be
A problem.
A huge issue for me. But it's actually really pleasant. It still has way too much air for me.
It does. Yeah.
A lot. The lower treble wasn't nearly the issue that I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And the bass is very bouncy and contrasty in a way that's fun. The mids are still a little bit thinner than I would want, and the bass is still a little bit too much. So like if you warm the mids, lessen the bass a little bit, it'd be more to like my taste as like an everyday kind of thing. But I think out of the box, this is an incredibly strong product actually, and I would say it competes with the Dusk DSP and the DaVinci and everything else that's going for something similar to this.
I found it significantly better than the Hype 10 as well.
That one I haven't heard.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I'll take your word for it. The community consensus seems to think that, like, it's kind of the Hype 10's more technical, but this one's better tuned, and it's, like, so much less expensive that it's, like, what's even
more
the point of Hype 10?
Right?
Yeah, that's what the people are saying, Andrew. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The ergonomics weren't great for me, unfortunately. But I think, especially as an EQ platform, this thing is pretty damn exceptional. If you're the type that is down to EQ, I EQ'd it to just like our chosen baseline with the Harman filters, and sounded fantastic. Like genuinely very, very good, and better than a lot of other IEMs. Like DaVinci or Dusk after EQ. And I think it has to do with whatever's going on in the treble on that set that just seems to work for me once I've just dipped a few areas.
I think my only issue with that whole thing is, I mean, it's like it's U-shaped, right? Like bass, upper treble and bass, right? And I part of me wishes they would move away from that platform for the bass drivers, for that sort of whatever they're doing with those drivers. I'm just not a fan. It always has the shelf too high up, and it always is a little too much. But I remember, like, it was actually kind of like it was a while ago when I got it in, and I went.
Yeah.
It was the Hype 2, and the Hype 4 and the Hype 10. And the Hype 2 was so disappointing to me. I thought, no, whatever's going on here, no. And then so it was not like overly. I didn't have highest expectations for the rest of the series. Sure. And I think I even tried the Hype 10 before the Hype 4, because I had them all in at once. And then I got to the Hype 4. I was like, what the hell? Like they've nailed it with this one. It's so much better.
Yeah, it is solid.
So yeah, that's like. This year, that was like, oh yeah, it was actually like in January, I think, when I tried it. It was like, this is, for me, it's still in contention for one of the best IEMs of the year. So, solid release.
I have very few bad things to say about it.
Yeah. we have more. Oh yeah, the 490 Pro. So I actually want to do a video
Now
about
it's your turn.
about the Sennheiser HD 490 Pro. But I can give some impressions here too. This one flew under my radar a bit, and I actually think that the video I'm going to do about this is going to be in part in relation to its performance in gaming. The thing is, I'm not currently up on the whole competitive FPS gaming scene. That was like maybe like years ago I would have been into that, but like I haven't been as in touch with that, so I need to kind of like re-engage with that and get good a little bit before I make those judgments. But I do feel that this is currently the easiest default recommendation for kind of like a mid-priced gaming headphone that's just really solid all around with these pads. So people like the DT, they enjoy the DT990, right? And they criticize the HD 600 series, which I have like all of them here somewhere.
Yeah.
And one of the criticisms is not enough bass. That's definitely true. Like the bass does taper off on the HD6 series, or not enough sub bass specifically, so it's not fully extended. And number two is the treble they find it too mid-rangey, right? So the treble is not as forward, where the DT990 it's like all treble. That's insane.
Yes.
Now, keeping in mind that a lot of that, and actually we have data to back this up, and I'll be doing a video on this shortly, but we do have measurements that show that actually the HD6 series for both the 650 and the 600s, when we're talking about fresh pads, they are actually considerably brighter in the treble than people realize. Especially like mid treble and upper treble. And that's one of the things that's actually pretty solid about them. And for people who prefer, they're into the DT990s, one of two things could be true. They're evaluating worn pads versus worn pads, and in that scenario, you might find that it's more sort of this mid-rangey thing. But then also, if you're just used to a much brighter sound like that, in comparison, it would come across, not as sparkly, right? So that's those headphones. This one is kind of like in between, I would say. It's kind of like a nice middle ground, and in that respect, the 490 Pro, I'm going to say this is like the closest that I've heard or used to a baby HD 800S. And I say that with respect to first let me back up. It solves the number one issue with the HD6 series, which is this has much better bass extension, full bass extension all the way down. And then number two, for the treble, it does have more of that sort of crispness and sparkle, not as fatiguing as the 560S. So I would actually say considerably better than the 560S. Its only real issue I find, apart from being just a little bit too much there in the treble for me, is it has the mid range kind of, like 1.5K to 2K kind of suck out that you also see on the HD 800S. So in this respect, it's doing that soundstage thing, the spaciousness effect thing, far better than the HD6 series, considerably better than the HD6 series. So for people who are looking for that sort of spaciousness effect, I don't think you need to go up to the HD 800S to experience that. I think you get that pretty good in this one. And the other thing is that I actually think because I evaluate these products not just as like what you get out of the box, but like as a platform, the whole product considered, this as a platform is goddamn phenomenal because
it's very compelling.
It's mechanically so much better than the HD6 series. It's mechanically one of the best headphones that Sennheiser has made. It is not as low acoustic Z as the HD 800, right? So that's just true. But it is it's okay for that, right? So your response is going to be fairly consistent from head to head. I will say there is some positional variance that you do see, like if it's kind of going, like that, because the pads do have some give and there is some influence there, more so than what you get on the HD 800S. But the overall like chamber of everything here, like the fact that it has cup swivel, right, and it's not this massive like clampy thing, it to me just goes such a long way to making this one of the easiest products that I could recommend for just like a headphone platform period. at any price.
Yeah.
And the issues with harmonic distortion and EQ and stuff like that I sort of, tongue-in-cheek whinge about with the HD6 series, it's definitely still here with this one. So it does not have exceptional performance there. But it's not like the things that you would EQ or adjust would ever come close to creating audible harmonic distortion issues, because it's so minor, right? Like it's less than what you do over, like, from an overall level standpoint. It's less than what you would do on an HD6 series headphone. So, like, if you were
With
to adjust
those pads, yes.
if you were to adjust the bass, actually, with the other pads, it would be a little more similar, I'd say. But with these pads, you do get more of that sort of bass and treble. So, from my perspective, I mean, it's a shame that Headphones.com doesn't sell this one, because this is from the Pro division. but this is what I would personally buy today, or one of the headphones that I would strongly consider buying today if I was interested in a headphone for gaming, because no EQ,
music, gaming, movies,
for everything, but like specifically for gaming, because no EQ, this thing is so unbelievably solid for the soundstage effect. It doesn't have the 3 blob character that the HD6 series has, and just overall, as I was saying, like, there's none of the comfort, clampy issues that, for big heads like myself, that you get with those. But then also, it's a headphone that, like, it's very easy to EQ. I found I had no issues EQing this one.
Yeah.
So it's just thumbs up all around for this. I think for people who are, like, I'm not going to say that this is better than the HD6 series for mid-range and treble. Like, I still think clearly HD600, HD650 are better for mids and treble than this. More balanced, right? But for people who are kind of like, they're looking for something that those headphones don't provide, being specifically a little more of a V-shaped sound, it just nails it. It's perfect for that. So
and the ergonomics and build are, in my opinion, like, actually better, like, meaningfully better than the 6 series, which does matter.
I like, you can attest to this, but I think folks watching can also attest to this, that, like, I do not get excited about headphones very easily. I'm not easily impressed by things. I'm impressed by this one. And I'm not going to say that, it's perfect across the board, or that it couldn't be improved, or that there aren't better things out there. There are. But for what this is, for the price point, and for what you get, you get the 2 sets of pads. Like, I'm kind of like, this is what headphones should be. This is what I want headphones to be. And so I'm quite enthusiastic about this one.
Cool.
Anyways,
man. I mean, I'm glad you finally got it to hear and test.
You were a little bit more critical of this one, though, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, the stock sound profile is not great, in my opinion, for listening to music. It is, as you say, a little V-shaped, a little bit, like, crispy in that, like, 4 to 6
lower treble
region.
I don't know if we call that lower treble, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, lower treble. Yeah, the presence region, as Rue would call it. But
yes,
I mean, I really enjoyed the ergonomics, the build, the accessories, the comfort is exceptional. I just thought it was better than the HD 660S, which was,
and S2 for sure.
Yeah, that's actually what I meant. Better than the S2, which is disappointing, because I'm pretty sure it's less expensive, even with the Pro version.
They should have swapped it. They should have made this the 660 S2, released it in the 6 series, and then everybody would have been happy.
Well, no, they wouldn't have. But
that's...
I do think it's Sennheiser's best chassis, and that deserves acknowledgement. Like, outside of the HD 800, like, I feel like it's incredibly accessible. Just slip it on your head. It's awesome comfort every time. The sound, it just wasn't for me. And I definitely didn't prefer the producer pads that you're wearing now.
The, as you call it,
I preferred the fabric pads that raised the mids a little bit, cut a little bit of the bass, and soften the treble around
it's
6K as well as 10K.
It does bring things closer in line with some of like the HD6 series sound for the mids and treble, right? I wouldn't say still quite on that level. Like, I'm still going to say the mid-range of those headphones is better than this one, like, categorically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say with the mixing pads, it's more like an HD 560S with less of the annoying glare in the 4 to 6K region, and a little bit of softness in the 1 to 2K region, where it still, like, extends linearly in the bass, but, like, it's not a bass forward sound at all.
Yeah. Comparing it actually to the 560S is interesting because I think it has similar strengths and similar weaknesses. But as a product overall, this is so much better because its mechanical design is just significantly better than the 560S.
It's exceptional. Like,
And
again, I think Sennheiser freaking nailed it.
they did.
The design.
Now, okay, so here's the question that I've kind of been struggling with because I don't really have a confident answer. Someone was asking me recently if they already own an HD 560S, which is like a headphone that's like $100 or $150. It's cheap, right?
It's like 200 retail, I think.
Yeah, but I've seen it on sale for like 150.
Yeah.
Or I've seen it on sale for sub 200. I'm thinking of like the 400 SE, which is like 100. So yeah, it is more expensive than that one. But yeah, it's like a fraction of the price of this, like easily less than half.
Yeah.
If you already own a 560S, is it worth it to go up to the 490 Pro in a scenario where you don't EQ?
I would probably say no, just because I think if you don't EQ, the HD 650 is still a stronger sounding option. So it depends what you want, right? Like
and if you live in
you're
North
just
America,
looking for like audiophile reproduction,
yeah,
a 600 or 650 is still what I would recommend.
Okay.
But
well,
if you
but what
want
about for
something
gaming?
more gamery,
Yeah.
like more V-shaped, more exciting or bassy or whatever, then 490 Pro is a compelling option, and I think I did recommend it at the end of my review.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't want the HD 600 or 650, but
well, I do think that like the big sort of like thing that throws the wrench in the wheels there is always still the HD 6XX, which is like $220.
Yeah, it's crazy value.
Yeah, but there are people who buy the 560S over the 6XX, which is insane. But like they do it specifically because they don't want the 3 blob effect. They want the full bass extension. They want something a bit more V-shaped, and that's where I'm thinking this comes along, and it's like the most logical, better thing than the 560S.
No, I would agree.
It's just a lot
especially
more
when you stop comparing it to Sennheiser options and start comparing it to like every other brand in this price range.
Yeah.
Like I would take that over a Sendara
or
personally.
Edition XS. Sendara is a tough one. I would as well, but I would take it over the Sendara mostly for mechanical design stuff.
Right.
I still
That's
think the
exactly
Sendara's
why I would take it
tonality is
over
better.
the Sendara. Yeah, probably in stock formation under like 10K or so. I would probably agree with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the comfort and the mechanical design is just so much better on 490 that yeah, it makes that and XS a little bit harder to.
Yeah, I mean, like it was already competitive in that range, like the sub $500 range, and the XS just got even more competitive with that. I think Cameron.
Yeah, there's like a refurbished sale for like $380.
A combo there with an amp. It's.
Oh yeah, for like less
insane.
than 600.
Yeah, I was like, what? No, like I think it was like less than 500. I think it was Cameron posted it somewhere. But even the Edition XSs, I've seen it on sale for under 400. So like things are getting,
And that's still a very compelling headphone, I would say, for that price. More compelling than Sendara, just because it is the massive cups and like huge drivers. And,
it's a better platform, right? Like Sendara might have a better default tonality, but it's a better platform for sure.
It is. Yeah.
But this getting back to the 490 Pro, I mean, I don't know how regularly Sennheiser's Pro Division stuff goes on sale.
No idea.
I know that they're you can get the 600s for $300. It's or 650s for. I've seen it, for $300. I think they're regularly priced at around 400 or 450. But what I'm wondering is if the same treatment would happen to these, given that they're in a different division or from a different division.
I really don't know. When I was working in pro audio, I didn't see their more expensive headphones go on sale very often. The HD 280 Pro went on sale fairly often.
Right.
But that was it.
Well, this is also new, so.
yeah, true. But the HD 400 Pro, which is basically just a more expensive 560S, never went on sale in the years we sold it. So my review for that headphone was subtitled Incrementalist, and I think giving all due credit to the mechanical design, I think the sound is like an incremental step forward from 560S.
Yeah.
What I'm really excited for now is taking that chassis and improving the sound if they can.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
that chassis is so goddamn solid. And
Yeah.
like even just the headband clicks, man, are like some of the most satisfying I've ever had in headphones. And if I could get that and that comfort and the openness with just something that's just marginally better in the mid-range and treble, I would be
Yeah.
so happy.
I completely agree. I mean, this is like you and I, we do EQ, right? But it's like, we
Yeah.
know that most people don't do that, right? So
Yeah, of course. So we have to just talk about the headphone.
yeah. So there is room, but it's
Nice.
man, you're right. Like incrementalist is the way to go, but like in the areas where they improved the most, those were things that it's weird because like those are things that personally they matter so much more to me, because
Same.
I'm an EQ, enthusiast.
Yep. Yeah, which is why I'm not like crazy surprised that you
Yes.
are liking it as much as you are.
Yeah, and it's like it's really easy to EQ this one. Like I'm just trying to think if I have like I don't have any narrow Q filters on this one whatsoever. Nothing above 3.
Yeah, I literally just did 6K minus 3 dB Q of 2 and then a bass shelf and I was fine.
Yeah, I added I filled. But you used the other pads.
Yes.
Right, where you wouldn't need to fill in the mids.
Not as much.
Not as much. Yeah.
Yeah, and my bass lift was like 2 dB or something like that. It was very, very modest.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's the headphones that we wanted to talk about out of the way. Would you take the 560S or 490 Pro over the Fiji FT3? I think you mean FIO FT3 for $299.
I haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard that one either. I have heard the FT5.
And I know you would take it over FT5.
I mean, that's not a good headphone, but I don't know about the FT3.
The FT3 is the dynamic driver version that actually, not version, but it's
one of them. Yeah,
one of their less expensive dynamic driver headphones. The measurements looked okay. I would be worried about there's something on 10K, on like the Gross clone measurements that everyone is doing. That seems like an ouchie point.
An ouchie point.
Yeah. For me, I mean that's where I usually have issues, especially like I tend to correlate very consistently Gross head or the KB5000 pinna in that region.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see like a spike where there should be, the dip, I get a little sus. I would probably take a 490 Pro over it based on what I saw of the measurement, but
there is a contender that in that price range, I think it is at least, that I am very interested in getting in, which is the Aun AR5000. I did hear it in Munich. I think that's one that it sounded less V-shaped than this. It sounded a little bit more kind of even keel, but and also ergonomically good, lightweight. I think that might also be one that's for the people who want a little bit less ear gain than what you get with the typical Sennheiser, like 3K forwardness, the HRTF-iness of those.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, if my memory serves, they look very similar graphed. The producer pad version of 490 Pro and AR5000, where it's like the downslope bass into slightly scooped mids, into lower treble heat, into I guess normal, whatever else above that. And it's kind of the same thing with like the 109 Pro or MDR MV1. 109 Pro has more upper treble. I think a lot of things are going for that signature right now because it's a moderately colored take on like V-shape, neutral, hybrid, whatever.
It's a good tuning.
Pretty pleasing to a lot of people.
It's solid.
It's not very controversial.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think that's that topic. Let's move on to topic number 2.
Okay, what do you think Oracle Mark III is going to be like?
Oh man, good question.
Yeah.
I haven't been in touch with the folks from Linsol, yeah, but I haven't been in touch with them in a while, so I'm not up to speed on what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean they said it would be a little bit until marketing units are sent out, but as someone who is a big fan of the Oracle OG,
I still have it. It's still a reference IEM for me.
Yeah, I'm sure you're hoping it'll be just like that, but with like better
Yeah, there's
everything.
a couple
Because
things that
Oracle
I would
Mark II
tweak.
was not that.
No, Oracle Mark II was worse in so many ways.
Yeah, and like that seems to be, from what I've seen, the community consensus
Yeah,
is that yeah, Mark II is just a miss. I think
yeah.
they just made it more V-shaped, which you know wasn't why it was special as far as
But
I've been
I
able to
get
see.
wanting to do something a bit different from that original tuning, right? But I mean, like
Yeah.
if you look at like before we were doing the population average thing for IEMs, there were a bunch of products on the market that kind of hit that, which is the Oracle Mark One, but also the clairvoyance. So
Yeah.
and a lot of people love the clairvoyance. I love the clairvoyance, right? So like there is a trajectory, like there's a historiography of these tunings that people do respond positively to, and so my hope is that with the Mark III they kind of go back to that, even if they're not necessarily paying attention to like the theory behind what good is in that respect,
Right. I don't
you
think
know,
they have their ear to the ground quite that
yeah,
closely. But I think there's a chance that it ends up being good. I will say, I think the Hype series ended up being kind of the spiritual succession of clairvoyance, because like
yeah.
clairvoyance
Well, Hype
really.
4, not Type 2.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they all have similar mid ranges, right?
I mean, the treble is
Yeah, I mean, I'm
something
not
else.
talking about the trouble, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what they felt like when they came out, and I saw the measurements.
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, so they're just updating clairvoyance into a lineup with a bunch
Hmm.
of slightly different options, different price points. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Oracle is gonna like be similarly tuned to the Hype series, which has been, as far as I can tell, pretty successful for them,
Hmm.
or if they're gonna try something uh, weird again.
We'll see. But yeah, I am hyped for that one. No pun intended.
I'm
Um,
cautiously optimistic.
yeah. So that's topic number 2. But I don't really have much other speculation on that other than yeah,
Just wanted to touch on it briefly.
yeah. Topic number 3, and this is where things get a little bit spicy potentially. But favorite
Yeah.
headphones that measure like butts but sound good.
Yeah. So
um,
this is something I wanted to talk about because I
yeah.
recently received measurements of a headphone I loved at CanJam New York
Hmm.
2023. And it was like the most expensive headphone I heard at the show. It was the Audio-Technica ATH-W 2022.
Okay.
So it's the one with like the beautiful
The really
wooden
expensive one.
cups, the really expensive closed back with
The one
like
that
deer
ended up being like
skin
2040
suede.
B tilt.
Yeah, and I
I
and I
heard that one
recently
too.
saw
I heard it too.
I recently saw a measurement of it. Let me see if I can.
I heard it as well. I was not as enthusiastic about it as you were. Um,
Right, but I mean, so when I feel like, by the way, the topic is favorite headphones that measure like butt but sound good. I feel like this is one of them where it really doesn't measure well, and you
mm,
wouldn't think at all that it could have any charm to anybody. But I love that thing.
mm,
It's probably in my top 5 of all time.
really?
Yeah, and it is absolute warm poo. It is like disgustingly, like cloyingly soupy, muddy, whatever you want to call it. But there's just something about that really just appealed to me when I heard it. And importantly, one of the biggest parts of my impression was that they had it on this like really like pretty amp with like VU meters and everything like that. So that obviously contributed to,
Hmm.
the overall impression. Um, but I grabbed the volume knob and I kept turning it up to like get a comfortable volume, and like I was going louder than I usually listen because I wasn't hitting a harshness threshold
Hmm.
because it just had no. I've posted
Can you
a
post it
graph
in the
in
regular
live
chat?
stream
Just
chat.
because I can't open this one while I'm
I
capturing.
did both.
Okay.
And that is I know.
We should put this on stream.
Pull it up
Can
for
you
the
share your
people.
screen and like and
Hold on
highlight that?
here.
Because that is remarkably bad. What was this measured on?
So this was measured on uh, Zach Merbach from ZMF's um, AECM 206,
What is
which
that?
is yeah. So it is the Audio Precision, the brand who makes the AP analyzer,
Is this gonna
was.
work?
Can you see my screen?
Watch
Oh
stream,
shoot!
I
Wait, wait,
guess.
wait! Don't. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, make sure you get all your weeb stuff off of your display.
I think I've curtailed. Hold on. Wait.
we just have butt thunk. And that's it.
Hold on a sec.
Uh,
Let me fix this really quick because I just want to full screen it, but I want to pull it up in a different window here. Open. I feel like people are like,
they're just waiting.
"Damn, this better be freaking weird for
No,
how
the
long we're
payoff is
having to
good.
wait." The payoff is good. Yeah, hold on.
I'm just wondering if there's any way that I can expedite the process here. I can.
No.
What if I do this?
All right, you should be good.
To watch it? Okay. Is this working? There we go.
I have no idea.
Yeah, no, it works, I think. Chat, you can see
You would
this,
know
right?
better than I do. I see it.
Yeah.
Yo, so Jorge, Zeos also really liked it, and it's one of the few times I've ever like emphatically agreed with Zeos. And like, remember, so that is a compensated measurement. It uses the again that AECM rig, which is the audio precision version of the Gross KB5000, like 45 CA.
So it's a 40, it's a 45 CA. What's the
It's a
cutoff?
45 CA but blue.
So
like
it's
the
just
ear
their
is
branded
literally
version.
blue. Yeah, so Gross is owned by
Yes.
either owned by or distributed by
Dis-
Axiometrics, who also owns Audio
Okay,
Precision.
okay.
So Audio Precision has their version of the rig.
So this is a 45 CA. And
Basically.
the
Compensated
calibration
to the-
is
Yes.
DFH or TF. Now, which DF is it? The updated one?
Yes, it is. It is mine. The correct.
The correct. Yeah. Man,
The DFH RTF for this rig.
how?
Isn't that glorious?
That's insane.
No, it's amazing, actually.
Where was this? Was this measured at a can jam or like what? Who was measuring? Like
No, Zach has a unit.
he measured it and posted. Oh, so you scraped the measurement.
Yeah. So it was sent to me by Dan from
right,
Audio
right.
Technica.
Yeah.
Who
Shout outs
was
to Dan.
Shouts out to Dan. Love my Daniel. He was the one who I guess okayed the measurement being shared.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I mean, this is like their $9,000 flagship. People could look at this and see it as a negative, but all I can say is it was the best headphone I heard at the show.
The only thing is like I heard it. It did not sound like this. So that's why I'm kind of like I'm sort of wondering like what was the process for the
You think it sounded more present in the treble?
Yeah. I mean, it still sounded dark, but it didn't sound that dark. And I didn't hear it I heard it with the stock pads. So
Right. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like to me it sounded like there was actually more 8K specifically.
Interesting.
Yeah, it did not sound that. Like we're talking like this is like 10 dB below where it should be.
Yeah.
And it did not sound that dark when I heard it. So that's why I'm curious, like if there was some positioning thing or what was going on.
Maybe. I mean, I know Zach doesn't do a whole ton of positional averaging for his measurements.
Right.
So it could maybe be a seating issue, but also it could just be like an HPTF, HRTF.
Could be. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I don't really know how similar you are to the Gross there. It's
well,
yeah,
I
like
was
that's
showing you the occluded canal mic stuff, and like
as well as just prior your EQ results have seemingly been better with 5128. Than,
yeah, definitely. Well, I mean my pinna effects certainly seem to be closer to that of the 5128, but where I think we differ, well, I know we differ is that my ears are substantially larger.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So, and then the Gross ear is also a bit larger than the 5 2/8. So, but as far as the actual ear features, mine are closer to the 5 2/8 and 4128s as well.
Got it. I'm gonna stop streaming now.
Okay.
Um, but I might do it again in just a second here because I want to talk about the new Glacier now.
Yes. So this is another one that
Which
you think measures like butts, but is
So I
subjectively
wouldn't say
enjoyable.
it's quite as bad as the W2022 where it like really measures poorly but like sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Because I mean Glacier just sounds like or measures like a kind of Harman type
Yes.
thing. Um, so let me pull
Glacier
that
is like
up.
Harmon with more sub bass.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a good way to think about it. But it is definitely the kind of thing that I would never typically be into. I'm sharing my screen again if you want to show the
Yeah. Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I was also not enthusiastic about this one, but it is one where I was like, yeah, people who are into like that dynamic, punchy kind of bass, they'll like it.
Dude, the bass hit so goddamn hard on this
Yeah,
IEM
it's crazy.
that like I was legitimately struggling to think of an IEM where it hit harder,
Yeah.
and like I still can't. Like
E-
it's still probably the most fun, like
yeah.
visceral, vivid, like
Oh, I
IEM
like what you
experience
did
I've
with
had.
the Harman filters line. I mean, this is visual chaos, but like I like that
Yeah, it's
you.
not great. I could
Yeah.
expand the range a bit,
Still,
separated, but
still. I mean,
yeah,
like
it's
if you're imagine you're new to this
got
and you see
limited
this, you're
tools
like,
here.
what is going on here?
Yeah, I could
But
also
I know what's going on in
uncompensate and
it.
yeah, show it a
Still,
little bit different.
but it's true. Like if you look at the Harman filters, it's different from just a slope, right? Like there is actually a meaningful change there in the treble. So
Yeah. So I really like this IEM. I really enjoyed it at the show.
mhm,
It was probably one of my top five from SoCal 2022.
yeah,
No, 2023.
yeah,
I would never own it because the ergonomics were absolutely atrocious.
it's
Um,
heavy as shit.
it's very heavy. The cable wasn't especially great either.
Yeah,
And obviously the stock tone is, once I get that home, I'll probably find issues with it once I start listening to a bunch more music and I'm not competing with the room or whatever.
yeah,
But this is the kind of thing where like if I could get that exact sound in like a more ergonomic IEM at a much lower price, I would totally have one of those around for when I'm like I want the bass to punch me in the throat.
yeah.
Yeah.
I I kind of likened it a little bit to like a um
I've stopped streaming by the
yeah,
way.
I got it. Uh, like the Let Shure IEM Cadenza
Cadenza
12.
12.
It's kind of like if Cadenza 12 went like Harmon but then enhanced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Glacier's kind of like Harmon with the contrast turned up to 150%.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It just
Which
sounds that much more saturated and vivid,
yeah, which I
fun.
to me it's like I would be able to use it, but I'd have to EQ down that treble stuff because it's just too shrill. Um, but okay, so that's that one. I'm trying to think if there's one for me. That's
Lawaris, the software was my website. Uh,
oh yeah,
which
that's his squig.
yeah, hold on, let
Yeah,
me
which
just throw that in chat real quick.
is inferior to what we're doing in every way. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, in some ways, like the visual clutter, like
That's what I mean.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's not
But you
great.
can it has more functions currently.
It has more functions. The issue is that it's really for like pro users right now because
Yeah.
I haven't done any sort of literature or
You
video about how to use it. I do intend to.
you are speaking only to the fattest end of the wedge. To the bottom
Yeah.
to the bottom of the iceberg, right? It's at the very the deepest points.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also just have the normal work similarly to,
Yeah.
I guess, Crins for
Yeah.
like for the 5128 and the IEMs, the KB whatever rig I use over there.
Yeah.
But EQ Playground is really the one that's got all the function targets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're weirdly measuring but good sounding.
Is it too much of a cold take to say the EM6L?
No, I don't think so.
Because it's and I realize the reason why. I have an easier time jamming it further into my ears, so I can get the insertion depth to kind of lower the peak in the treble. So that's one of them. The other one would be, I mean, to a certain extent, I would still say U12T.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
and I would say that measures weird.
it does. Like U6T measures better. Like U6T measures, I would say good.
Yeah.
And I prefer the U6T over the U12T. The most time I spent with U6T, I was actually on just like a road trip.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it then.
And I remember being kind of blown away by it. So like, but I
Yeah.
wasn't directly comparing to the U12T. So I don't know which one I would.
Yeah,
I'd
I
have
still gotta send it back to you. Actually,
yeah.
I have a whole bunch of stuff I
Yeah.
have to send back, so I'll try to do that this week.
Yeah. For me, another one is the SA6, the original SA6. I would say that
Oh,
measures.
that's a
pretty
great
weird,
example, actually.
but
yeah,
I
it's
find it very enjoyable.
very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially by today's standards,
Yeah,
it looks really
exactly.
weird. But like, I don't think that invalidates anyone's impressions of how much they enjoyed it. Like,
And-
I know Metal also really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and same with the Orchestra Lite. I thought the Orchestra Lite was pretty good too.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
the original Orchestra as well. It's a bit glary,
Yeah.
but I mean they definitely have a bit of the honk there, but I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, so those actually fit the bill really well, I think. Because I wouldn't say those really fit in with like either our new meta or like
That's right.
traditional Harman or
Yep.
anything like that.
It's very easy to get along with. I mean, and you mentioned it sort of like with that sort of like, cloying down tilt. I think those ones do kind of have that in the sense. Certainly the SA6 with the bass toggle on has that, but it's just, that's one where you can sink into the soup and really just enjoy it. It's not in a way that that I didn't like. Yeah, so that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like an over ear though that's like that. I mean, to a certain extent, the Batiste. I don't know.
We definitely count that.
But the thing is, I don't actually use it the way that normal people use it. So,
Oh, you EQ it?
Yeah, I EQ the shit out of it. And actually, okay, so like my setup for it is I use that Creative W5 thing. Oh, you disappeared. Oh,
Sorry about that.
You're back. Yeah. No, like the Creative Labs BTW5. It's the thing that Tam
the
sent
little
me.
Bluetooth dongle. Yeah.
So like when Tam sent it to me,
Shout out to Tam.
Yeah, I immediately was like, I have to buy one of these. It's just so useful. So I bought one. It's a Bluetooth sound card, essentially. Bluetooth dongle.
But with Batiste especially, I bet that just makes it so much better.
Yeah, because when if you're using like a computer, it gets really like a desktop computer. It gets really annoying to try and pair Bluetooth headphones with it because they just have whatever the shitty built-in Bluetooth codec. And with the BTW5. Or I think that's what it's called. It functions way more just like it functions kind of like if you're just pairing with your phone, right? Like you have, the higher quality available. And with that, I initialized that with Peace with Equalizer APO, and so I'm able to do all kinds of EQ for wireless headphones. And so then I dove in with the Batiste and EQ'd the shit out of it, and now I'm a happy boy. But yeah, I mean, like there's definitely headphones that I would say that measure kind of weird that I've enjoyed as well, though. Like, I mean, recently we were talking about the Noble Onyx. Actually, when Blaine was last
did you
week.
get to try that again when they?
So I listened to it for a bit, and Blaine listened to it for a bit, and we both really liked the treble. I mean, like I would say that treble is where headphones and IEMs go to die. Like if there's something weird in the treble, it often doesn't matter how good the rest of the response is. You can't get over that.
Spit.
I can't. Right?
Spit.
Yeah. So, but with the Onyx, it actually sounded pretty good for the treble, even though it measured weird in the treble. It measured it had a peak at 6K when we measured, and I was like, "How is this?
How is that
tolerable to me?
Not bothering you?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it definitely measures weird, but like we enjoyed it. Blaine
That
enjoyed
thing
it.
had a ton of positive impressions on the show floor at 24 New York.
I mean, definitely it was like colored in the ear gain region, like it has no ear gain, but so it has that sort of like almost like Odyssey kind of sound to it with for the ear gain, right? Lacking in clarity, but it makes up for it with solid treble presentation, and so yeah, I liked it.
Had a lot of bass too, I think, right?
Yeah, it had bass, a lot of bass. Yeah, like if you think about it, it's like kind of like U-shaped, but where the recess is in the ear gain, so it kind of also made it like really versatile with a lot of different recordings.
That's cool.
And it's funny because like when Blaine was visiting, his test tracks were like fucking Feuerschwanz and Sabaton and like just stuff.
Of course.
And Stan Rogers, of course. And I'm there like with my esoteric jazz, like, or forcing him to listen to Eric Clapton or something. So, but very different types of music that we were throwing at it. But no, we liked it. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna edit our list a little bit here because I wanna do something a little.
I would say I also enjoy the ZMF Calderas, right? Like the Caldera closed.
So I would actually say those measure well.
The Caldera wait, open or closed?
I've only seen a measurement for the open.
So it's funny that you say that because it was disqualified for how poorly it measured on ASR.
Caldera open?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they're just judging based on harmony adherence.
Yeah.
Which I get it.
Well,
and
actually,
it's
so
not,
like
it's also not especially cheap. So I also understand why
but
a more skeptical community like that would not love it.
Well, my point there was that actually, if you consider bass to treble delta for one of the other potential classes of listeners, it would actually do reasonably well, right? Like for the people who liked less treble, it would actually do just fine. I wouldn't say it would be class 2.
I think if you're shopping for a planar and you're not like the biggest fan of treble, well, if you're not the biggest fan of treble, planars might not be the best idea, period.
That's true.
But Caldera is like one of the ones I genuinely like on the market, and there aren't many of those.
Yeah,
like I would own Caldera if I
would
had the
too.
money
I would agree. Like to me, I was like this. Well, I actually heard the closed for way longer than I heard the open because I went back to when I was at Munich High End. I went back several times to listen to the closed, and I kept thinking like, yeah, like this is a great example of like it doesn't all have to be this neutrality thing. It can be this kind of more
I would actually think a lot of
in a really pleasant way.
I would think a lot of his closed designs specifically kind of fit the mold of like not measuring great, but when you listen to them, they're like there's definitely something interesting there. And like Caldera close, I had it paired with the Lord Gwyn Aegis, I think it's called. It's like the new amp that he's putting out, I think. It was a little too muffly for me, but I didn't know what pads were on it. I didn't know what effect the tube amp was having with the synergy. Yeah. And I know that the Caldera close actually has like a passive filter in it, cutting treble. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that passive component is interacting with what's going on in the tube amp either. But the bass and mids were decent. It just felt like there was a hole around 8K or something like that.
I mean, probably
but yeah, it was a warm, dark headphone, which I would never expect of a planar magnetic closed back headphone. Like comparing that to an LCD XC would be night and day.
Yeah. Oh, very different. Very, very different.
Yeah.
But I would prefer the Caldera closed over the XC.
I would too.
Yeah, but it's mainly that the kind of the ear gain's a bit like flavored,
Certainly.
So it didn't sound like, I would say if anything it sounded like natural, but it wasn't like that really focused kind of sound for the ear gain that you get with like an HD6 series, right?
Definitely not. Which I actually prefer a warmer sound in closed backs. I mean, clearly with the audio technical one I just showed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's something to do with the stiffer air in a closed back, feeling like it's more closely coupled to my eardrum and feeling like I'm more sensitive to everything or something like that.
Could be.
I just feel like I like less ear gain in closed backs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Lore Hogang anyways, right? So I find if it's just a little too forward in the wrong spot, and I think Joel's right with where that spot is could maybe shift from person to person, and if it's a bit forward, I don't like it. And that's one of the things that I appreciated about the Caldera Close is that it was more relaxed there. And I find it more versatile for the dog shit music that I listen to. So,
I mean, your music isn't bad.
No, but some of it is.
And maybe some of the metal.
I mean, I listen to a lot of Opeth and like catatonia and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like I would say maybe not what I would go with for my esoteric jazz. I would maybe want something with a bit more ear gain, a bit more clarity there. Maybe that's why, you know, I love the HD 600 so much, right? Because it does great for that.
Sure does.
Yeah. Anyways, topic number 3 or 4, I think we can get to. Yes.
Yeah. So I want you to do this first, because I feel like you've probably done some content about this, but I feel like whenever that was, you're in a much different place now.
So
like,
the topic is this: build your ideal component chain from transducer all the way back to playback software.
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to know if it's at home listening exclusively.
Yeah.
Just for listening to music. And like, say you're listening at a desk or something, you know, you have space to put
the
components.
vast majority of my.
Well, it's also, you know,
I'm
a pretty common use
stationary
case for
boy.
audiophiles.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
stay away from DAPs. I don't use them. I do have a DAP here. This is the DX something. I don't actually know if this works. I've never turned it on. I just use it for B-roll. But yeah. So my listening situation is what you're seeing here. This is how I listen, right? I have a desktop computer. I have my tools here. I'm often working, and then, you know, if I'm not working, I'm listening to music, and it's the same. In the rare occasion that I go outside, I am usually not listening, or if I am, it would be with like the Dusk default DSP or something like that. My ideal chain right now. So, do you want me to go transducer first, or do you want me to go playback software first?
I think it's probably more suspenseful if you go playback software
Playback
first.
software. Okay. Playback software. So I've recently switched back to Tidal.
Oh,
I was using
interesting.
Spotify because it was just I got so in Canada for a long time. Tidal had issues with buffering, and so you couldn't get the playback that would be good, or like even if it had, you know, like even if there weren't any other issues with it, which at the time there was also the whole MQA thing.
Sure.
The buffering thing was the thing that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I went on a trajectory for like, I tried Amazon Music, and I had Qobuz briefly, but they didn't have all the tracks, the esoteric jazz that I wanted. So I recently again just moved back to Tidal to give it another shot. They've ditched the MQA thing, and they still have MQA, but that's not the relevant bit about it. But they do actually have lossless as well, and they have a good library, and their interface is better now, and so far no buffering, so I'm giving that a try.
And you're just using Tidal. You're not using Tidal with Rune.
No. Tidal, Equalizer, APO, PCUI. I mean,
Okay,
I would.
Now
use
I'm
Rune.
asking,
I'm just
would
broke
Rune
ass.
be better? Because this is about building your
ideal. Okay. Yes, I do prefer the way Rune handles its DSP. It's just visually better. I prefer the library functions. Yeah, I would use Rune with either Tidal or Qobuz. I mean, this is ideal, so I guess I could use both. Right? If I had money, I would do that.
Sure.
So then DAC. To me, it doesn't really matter that much. I'd be perfectly happy with the Matrix X Saber Pro for the DAC.
Okay.
It's a good
Nice
DAC.
looking.
Nice
Good
looking.
form factor.
Yeah. Measures well. Versatile.
Measures well.
Yep.
Sure.
And then for the amplifier, Felix Envy 25th Anniversary Edition. There are so many times that I've gone into the office, because Taryn has a 25th anniversary on his desk. I go into the office, and Taryn's like, hey, there's a new headphone here. I don't want to... He's very careful about, like, not coloring my impressions, not affecting... Like, he doesn't want to say anything about the product until I have a chance to listen to it. So he'll get a new headphone in, and he'll be like, here, try this. And I try it off of the Felix 25th Anniversary Edition. I go, oh, my God, this is great. This is amazing. And then I get it home, and I'm like, what the hell? This is dog shit. Or, you know, like, even if it's not that extreme, it's like, oh, I'm not as enthusiastic about it. I'm like, okay, I can hear a lot of issues now. And part of that is being in a more, controlled environment at home versus that first impression. But I think a big factor is that amp.
Sure.
I have yet to hear anything from that amp that isn't elevated significantly because of it. And I know it's a tube amp. I know there's like harmonic distortion. I don't care. It sounds remarkable. And notably better than the non 25th anniversary edition.
Hell yeah. I'm very down with that answer.
Then my
Your cable
cable.
that goes from the headphone to the amp.
I have to show the Listen More cable. It's come on. There's an HD600 stuck on it. There we go. It's this cable. It's cheap. It's lightweight. This one's blue, so I'd probably get a colorless one. Oh, this is the Dunu Arashi, by the way, for anyone wondering what that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know you still had that.
Yeah, I do. It's Anyway, so yeah, probably this cable because it's cheap, it's lightweight, and I can get it in the lengths that I want.
Oh, true.
So
yeah,
that's a factor. And then, well, actually, I should say if it's not the Listen More cable, because again, it's a meme for me because I like Taryn was saying, oh yeah, what we can do is like for B-roll, even for headphones, because there's no claims about this changing the sound. This is not a thing that's about sound. It's just
that's
a
not
cable.
Yeah.
But he's saying like there's only like 3.5 millimeter and I think mini XLR. I don't think there's
on the headphone side.
Oh, maybe there's. I'm totally butchering this, so I apologize. I don't know what they're actually at right now.
I actually don't even think there's mini XLR.
Oh,
I
maybe
think
not
it's
then.
only.
No,
it's only
there's got to be
3.5.
another one. Anyway, what we were joking about is like, yeah, I could like put these with headphones where it's the wrong connector type and just like pretend to have it connected. Like put that in videos, but that'd be the stupidest thing ever.
It would be not a great idea.
So I suppose a more serious answer to this would be maybe something from Skedra, right? I could talk to Sked. He makes good cables. That's Viking.
Yes, he
cable.
does.
And could find something there would be ergonomic. But I do find these to be ergonomic, right? So
I do too.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
And then for the headphone, it would be. And I didn't think that it was going to be. It would be this guy.
But you didn't think it was going to be?
Because it's been a long time since I've evaluated a Sesfara.
Oh.
And I recently got it in again just to do updated measurements. And
sure.
there was like that post about it on ASR where it was like, there's all these issues with distortion and, excursion limit and messy response, group delay stuff, and I was like, is any of this true? So I got this unit, and this is the retail unit from inventory, and I sort of had this idea in my head that like, okay, maybe my impression of it after years of learning, and years of measuring and years of EQ, maybe my sort of interpretation of its goodness for sound quality would be not what it was, right? I had some doubt there, a skepticism, and it was just as good as before, and none of the issues that were in that post. Like I measured it at 114.1 dB SPL calibrated, and it has less than 2% harmonic distortion.
Broadband.
Yeah, well,
so like nothing above 2 anywhere.
Nothing above 2 anywhere.
Upper mids, treble,
most of it
bass.
is below 1%. The high order stuff is below 0.2%. So like I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly fine for that. No excess group delay issues, so there's no issues with ringing or time domain stuff that we need to worry about. The only thing is that it has a bit of a modal response, which is kind of like the wibbles. That's definitely true. But the degree to like if you're doing a manual cursor based sweep with a modal response there, like it's not just this headphone, like the Eggy Mans have this, and then even like if you go down to like their lower end ones like the 560S and stuff like that, 560. Yeah, you know the one, the 560. Anyway, like they have that the more of the wibbles in the mid range, and even those ones, if you're doing a manual cursor based sweep, you can't really hear them. Like they're very narrow. Like if you squint real hard with a sweep, you can hear kind of like a forward elevation if you imagined it to be smooth to like 1/6 or 1/3, you know, like
I would say 1/3.
1/3. Yeah, maybe you could hear like a
at,
bit of
like frequencies below 1,000 hertz. It's
and they usually are for much of them, right? I mean, there's some fine grained modal stuff for ear gain as well, but it's generally not audible. So I didn't have any issues with that. So I was getting this in part because of anticipation for reviewing the Unveiled, and I just thought, like this is remarkable. Unveiled, I'm not allowed to talk about it yet. Still,
you're not allowed to talk about the sound yet.
The sound yet, yeah. But I do want to note that for me, if it's a choice between the two, I still actually go OG Sesvara just because it has grills. And
the nervosa of
exactly. I already have
with,
issues with anxiety. I don't need more. So
reasonable.
So I don't want to be
Very
like
reasonable.
thinking, am I gonna accidentally poke holes through the transducer? If I just take it off or whatever. So and then with EQ, of course, my EQ software in that case would be Rune, and I would just go from there. So that's my sort of chain from pillar to post. That doesn't mean that I don't find other systems that I've heard in the world, like on the similar playing field, like you could say HE1, but technically I do actually think that because I could EQ the HE1, right? I just didn't. So
HE1 also takes up a lot of space on the desk.
Yeah. The HE1 is more comfortable. I will say that. I would
agree there.
Yeah. And same thing, like the Aperio. I don't know if you heard the Aperio. It's like I didn't dive into anything, and I don't find it as comfortable as the HE1 or the Sesvara. So, like it's remarkable. Sure, I like qualities about it, but it's not. I would still probably choose this over that for myself, just because of the way that I use this stuff.
Cool. All right. So, like some things I didn't expect, and some things I did expect, like Sesvara. So Sesvara and Matrix X Saber Pro, just like any clean DAC. Expected. I didn't expect the amp to be a tube amp.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it was, because tube amps are dope.
They are.
Yeah. Regardless
of
good
ones are dope.
Yeah, good ones.
Bad ones.
No, but like even like, actually, I'm not even gonna spoil this. I'll just go into my chain as I would do it. So, I actually wouldn't use Rune. I would actually use what I use now, which is just Apple Music and Sound Source, which is Mac software that basically overtakes your whole audio stack, and you could just apply VST plugins to it.
Okay, but imagine you like with this hypothetical scenario, you're rich and you don't need to.
No, I know.
So you don't need to use a Mac. You can use a nice computer.
I wasn't expecting that to be the punchline. That was pretty funny. All
right, sorry, continue.
No, it's just Apple Music has like a really, like, it has the second biggest library compared to Spotify. It has included lossless. It's a GUI that I've been familiar with since I was a child.
Right.
So I'm very quick moving through it. Using it with the Mac audio stack, even if I wasn't EQing, would be flawlessly integrated very fast.
Yeah.
I am using it with that external software Sound Source, which is only there for the EQ purposes that I would still need with any headphone, unfortunately. But I would prefer that to Rune, because when Rune takes exclusive control using exclusive mode, you can't like listen to music on YouTube or Bandcamp or anything like that.
That is true. That is annoying.
Yeah. So I would do that just so I could have the EQ applied to everything. So that would be my software setup.
Which is also like a +1 for Equalizer APO, because it does that too.
It does. If you care about your software having exclusive control over your DAC, mine isn't going to satisfy that need. So just be aware of that. Anyway. blinds are getting shut. So moving from that to the DAC, I would actually choose the Exogal Comet. I don't know if you're aware of that. It is a well, the company went under, so they no longer exist, and it is completely unsupported except by Mitch RT in chat. Actually, it's one of the keepers of like all of the software firmware. He's like made a custom controller app for it. For it, frankly, nuts what he's done, but it is my favorite sounding DAC. It's a DAC where I wouldn't be surprised if there was a measurable difference. When I level match A, B, Seed versus two other DACs, it had a like noticeable cut around 10K that almost sounded like a notch filter. It was very strange, but it was level matched, and I was like just listening to the same section over and over again. So I heard a difference. I don't know if there was a measurable difference, but in terms of the sound, it would make my EQ a lot simpler because I wouldn't have to do as much treble correction.
Interesting.
So that would be my DAC. It's also pretty small, fits on a desk pretty easily. The user interface is pretty terrible, but I would just be plugging it in and kind of leaving it. So moving from the DAC to the amp, I would get the WA7 Fireflies.
Really?
Blue Audio.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are bad.
Absolutely.
Those are bad.
In terms of sound?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't care. It's the cutest looking amp on the planet.
Okay.
It's just a little cute box with the glass and the tubes and.
I mean, it is.
I would love to have one of those on my desk.
God.
I would just the pleasure of looking at it.
You'd have to have a separate amp as well, though.
Okay, then I'll just put one of those on my desk and plug into an Apple. Does that make you happy? or the headphone output of the Comet. I don't care. I just want that on my desk so I can look at it because it's genuinely like such a nice looking piece of kit. And
that's
like,
funny.
Obviously, I don't have the money.
You went hardcore on the DAC and you went lo-fi on
the amp. Lo-fi on the amp.
Yeah.
Actually, I still haven't even heard the Fireflies. I have no idea how it sounds. It's just based on looks.
Maybe there's some combination.
I've wanted it for basically as long as I've known it's existed.
Okay.
So from there, I would take a Listen More cable, actually.
There you go.
And this isn't even a shill. It is just the most ergonomic feeling cable I've used. It's extremely lightweight, and the fact that it's so many cores and it's like loosely wrapped, but not super loosely wrapped.
I want them to make like a gray one.
We have a silver one.
There's a silver one, but it's kind of more of like a. Well, I'm
still too ostentatious for you.
It's not my favorite color. I mean,
okay. You want like a gunmetal gray?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, it would definitely be a Listen More cable. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the connector.
The big one.
Yeah, it's a little thick for me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a little thick. Yeah. But past that, I do, and I probably wouldn't get it in blue. I would probably just want it in like black or gray or something like that. But I love that cable. And then for the headphone, it would still be HD 800. Although if I were rich, what I would be doing, I would be going to Colorware. Do you know Colorware?
No.
Okay, so Colorware they're like this brand that make custom color versions of different plastic goods. So like they've manufactured like custom HD 800s before, where like they replace all the plastic parts with their own plastic parts, with custom colors.
But don't you think there's a risk of like messing up the? I'm just thinking of Jude's story about how that HD 800S from Tile, the HD 800 from Tile that had the SDR mod measured worse, or it measured somehow in unconventionally, but it was in part because of the way that it was reversed, because of the parts that they didn't have the same tolerances for how tightly things were screwed in and stuff like that.
I have no idea. As far as I'm aware, they don't modify anything internal, so they don't touch the baffle mesh, they don't touch the driver, they don't. Yeah, it's just replacing like the plastic chassis parts.
Okay.
And I would get that with like a deep green and maybe like a very subtle brass accent somewhere.
A very subtle brass accent?
Brass accent, yeah.
Okay.
And I think I would also give Capper Audio, who's in chat, a few $1,000s of R&D money to figure out how to make a suspension strap for it.
Yeah.
And then I think, yeah, then I would be like, this is my perfect setup.
HD 800.
I would
Oof.
well, I would be EQing it, but
Yeah,
like
the
I would have to
bass is
EQ
also
anything.
poopy.
Not after EQ.
Have to try your EQ on the HD100S then for the bass.
I will gladly send you my EQ for the HD100S, except for whatever above like 10K, because
Yeah.
I cut a lot more than you would need cut.
Because well, like here's the other side of it too. It's like I can see the argument for the HD100S, with EQ. I can also see an argument for an Empyrean too with EQ because it's the build quality.
That's a compelling option.
And
I don't like how heavy it is, and I don't like.
Heavier, yeah, but it's comfortable.
Yeah, I would have to try it with the Alcantara pads. I only tried it with the leather pads, and I still think leather is not as good as like an HD800. I also don't think the Empyrean is quite as open as HD800. So
Maybe
like
not.
I can wear HD800 on a summer day, no problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could do that with an Empyrean, even with suede pads.
But with Empyrean 2, you'd get better harmonic distortion performance, so it increases your feelings of confidence when you are messing with EQ and fine grained filters. And you can go mega bass boost if you want.
Perhaps. I mean, I don't do that, so I wouldn't need that. But I also just like the HD800 design better, and that might be a but also I feel like the comfort is on the head, like on the top of the head, not as good as Empyrean, sure. But like the ear cup comfort on HD800 is still unbeat.
With the Empyrean, you could like pull the yoke or the arm out of the thing and just like, like how just refined it all feels to use, like the little headband extension system where you just slide.
It is better.
It's very satisfying.
Although it is better in feel. I will say I don't love how there are no notches.
That's true.
Like, so you don't know if you're getting a precisely even seating every time. Yeah. That would probably bother me after a while.
That's true.
Now that I think about it.
But with the HD800S, I'm not sure you weren't there for this, but we were in a meeting and Blaine had the HD800S and he was talking about it, and he was trying to demonstrate something with the HD800S, and as he was doing so, the cup fell off. Like the slidey clicky mechanism just completely fell off. And I can't imagine that happening with the Empyrean 2.
I can tell you, after that, he just took it, put it right back on, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that wouldn't happen for a Meze, because it probably would. Their stuff seems very well built and sensible.
Yeah. I think you can like repair all the different parts.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. They care about the right things when it comes to building comfort. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I do love the modularity and the user serviceability of Sennheiser. And HD800S is still a lighter headphone than Empyrean. Just because
it's funny because when I was saying so far, I hadn't even factored in like MP2 with EQ. It's up there, man. It's up there.
Damn. I still haven't heard it with EQ.
Okay, I mean, you kind of like
have to
with all these over-ear headphones. Like you kind of have to. Like
I would definitely have to.
Yeah, like I mean, I say you have to. Like people don't have to. But if you are taking this if you are as into the weeds as we are on this, we probably
in my ideal chain, if that was the headphone at the end of it, I would have to EQ it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That's that.
I think it's interesting that we both went with tube amps for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
But
so I was thinking about this actually, because with the DAC, I hadn't even considered things like the chord stuff. And like just because of how unhinged and hilarious it looks, because I do think and
they are silly looking.
But
there's charm to that in like a Y2K kind of way though.
Yeah. Like I was thinking like, okay, am I gonna really care about like the sound difference? I don't care about DACs really, right? But like if I have an opportunity to have something that is just like a ridiculous, cool thing, it's definitely a chord amp, right?
Sure.
And like I what are your thoughts on like the whole FPG whatever FPGA FP what is the
FPG field programmable gate array. Yeah.
Do you think that there's any reason to suspect that stuff sounds different from regular like off the shelf stuff.
Well, it's like any other DAC. It depends on the implementation, and
Yeah.
like the whole point of like an FPGA is that you can it's very customizable. You
Right.
can
You
like
can do
with
lots with it.
software, as
Yeah.
far as I'm aware, do a lot of different stuff with it.
Yeah.
The Exogal Comet that I mentioned is an
Oh,
FPGA
okay,
DAC.
okay.
And
So
it's
yeah,
I mean it sounds different than the chord implementations I've heard,
right.
and I get the sense that was purposeful.
So I'm open minded to chord stuff because they do, you know, funky stuff with that.
Yeah, yeah. Rob Watts is trying to push boundaries in terms of like the actual,
Yeah.
I guess, science of audio reproduction digitally, which really matters to a lot of people, and that's why it gets a lot of success. So I get why people go for chord.
I could
And
have
they
said
also
the
look really
Wandla
funny,
Golden Sound
basically.
edition if I was you know,
Just gonna
shilling our
chill.
buddy there. Yeah. But the thing is, like, I haven't heard it. I know nothing about it.
I
So
didn't
like,
get
I
to hear
couldn't
it
tell
either.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I do really like the look of
Yeah.
the Ferrum pieces of gear. I didn't really like the OOR with the Hypsos, and I
Oh, the
was
amp.
middling on the Urco, but
Right,
I
yeah.
didn't hear the Wandla Golden Sound Edition
I mean,
or
they all
not.
sound like DACs all sound basically the same after a certain point. It doesn't. What do you
Yeah,
really?
I think the reason why the Comet is an obvious choice
It
for me
sounds
is
different.
because
Yeah.
it sounded different,
Yeah.
and like I don't necessarily, it wasn't in controlled circumstances, so
Right.
like I controlled for it as best as I could at the time, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I take plenty of grains of salt with that.
Right.
But it was so stark that like it's easily my only DAC that I talk about like wanting.
Right. Gotcha. Someone says Comet is super warm poo, so listener likey. That makes sense. This all
That's right, Nick.
rocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hang out there with his Rode NTH 100 with the filters in.
That would have been good for the topic, talking about things that that maybe
It
don't
doesn't
measure so
measure
well.
that
But
bad
some,
though. Like it doesn't
it
measure
really
nearly as
doesn't.
crazy.
It really doesn't. It actually
Yeah.
measures fairly well for a
Yeah.
closed back.
But it is
in
warm
my
poo.
opinion.
Like that's
It's on the warmer side. That's for sure. Yeah.
based warm poo enjoyer.
That's right.
Okay. That's that topic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this next one actually came up
I don't
from
even know what number we're on here. It's topic number 6 now.
5, 6.
5. Topic number 5.
Yeah, this is a topic that came up in our Discord server. Shouts out to Liz, who I had a productive, I think, discussion with. We ended up, just kind of agreeing to disagree at the end of it, but it ended up being an interesting discussion. And the topic is the hobby itself trending towards consuming less? And is this a good thing? So I would say that the hobby is trending towards consuming less. And
What do you mean by consuming less?
so the context in which this was brought up was Liz complaining about a lot of the discourse in our server being centered around EQ.
Okay.
She's, I guess you could call a detractor from EQ, not insofar as they think it's useful.
No, it ruins your technicalities.
It does not. But
But they think it does.
I think her point would be most succinctly summarized as it makes people less familiar with the gear itself because they just EQ it immediately as soon as they get it. They don't spend time getting to learn their gear. So they don't have any constructive.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I was just gonna say that kind of like if you're the kind of person to EQ everything to the same kind of sound signature, I can kind of understand that, but I don't know that that's how I would approach a product.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who do though. Like, I think there are a lot of people who buy something
They'll just
and then are
slap
like,
on auto
okay, let me
EQ
go ahead
or
and grab
oratory preset. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think Liz's take is very much so like hobby centric. So it's about like if we don't have people as familiar with the gear they're testing, the discourse suffers because there's less impressions to go around and there's less, actual discussion. And in a way, that's kind of like a death of the hobby. Like if people are just all EQing to their own personal things, like what is there really to discuss?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some truth to that. Like I think if that is the case, then that does kind of lessen the discussions that have traditionally happened in this hobby until maybe the last few years.
Yeah.
Where people are just going back and forth on impressions, disagreeing ad nauseum, but having a good time. Um, I'm not necessarily sure it's bad though.
So I don't think that that's the best Steelman for, EQ is the devil. Um,
I
the
don't think that was her
Oh,
take, by
okay,
the way.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
but I still think
I just think it was more of a generalized, like, the hobby is kind of going in a direction I don't like.
right. But a lot of people who are anti EQ you could kind of put them into one of several categories for their reasoning why they don't like it. It's either inconvenient, they feel it ruins their technicalities, um, or what you just said about there's the um,
It
like
makes the hobby less
yeah,
fun.
yeah. And that last one I think has an adjacent element to it, which I think is the only reason to not do EQ. Well, the third one, the latter there, is the real reason not to do EQ. But I think that there's an adjacent or missing part of that, which is that if you treat these products as not just sound delivery devices for your auditory experiences, but as a combination of as rather an artistic expression, there is an element of artistic expression that gets lost when you turn it into your ideal sound delivery device, because now you are basically imparting your own characterization on somebody else's art, let's say. And I do think it's worth, like, that's not obviously not how I approach this stuff, but like, if anybody is giving me that argument that like headphones shouldn't just be seen as sound delivery devices, these are expressions of artistry from craftspeople, from engineers, and we should take that seriously. And as soon as we start doing EQ, we remove an element of their intention, for the same reason that like we think of sound as, or headphones as, and speakers as like the thing that allows us to hear, not necessarily as the artist intended, but music. That's the art form. We're thinking of the music as the art form. But a lot of people, they think of the headphones, like the audio products themselves, as the art form, or like an additional art form. And so in that respect, I do think that that's a reasonable kind of like critique of the EQ gang. At the same time, that I think requires several things. One, it requires being rich, or like being okay with basically like you're going to end up owning multiple headphones, right? And I don't, not just multiple, but probably a lot, unless you get lucky. But B, also being more hobbyist about this stuff than I think we should really expect people to be. It's for better or for worse, right? Like I don't actually think that that's a bad thing. I think it's just like, is this something that most people are going to be doing? Well, maybe not. So yeah, to get to the heart of the question of, are people consuming more or less in the hobby? It's funny because when I saw that topic, I wasn't even initially thinking about EQ. I was thinking more along the lines of like, it's not that they're consuming less or people are consuming less. I really strongly feel that what people are consuming has just shifted. And it's shifted to things. So like, it used to be, not even that long ago, like a new high-end headphone came out, everybody be talking about it. Now it feels like the excitement and sort of thrill of things, the hype behind things, is happening. It's going more down market. It's happening more in the IEM space, and it's happening more like, we talk about flavor of the month type stuff, but also when there's major change and innovation happening with tunings, what the popular tuning trends are, those types of things. And I actually think that we have EQ to thank for some of this, some of the positivity.
Yeah,
that's
EQ and frequency response measurements.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and the measurement as well. So I just think it's shifted. I think people are probably consuming the same. People who want to spend $1,000 on an IEM or a headphone, they're going to want to spend $1,000 on an IEM or a headphone. But I feel like the activity surrounding consumption of audio products has just shifted a little bit from where it used to be. And for better or for worse, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a reasonable take. I like my perception of it is that versus a few years ago, people are consuming less, and I mean obviously there are economic factors to that, but
Mm.
I do think that the average consumer is more well informed about, if not their own taste, about what is actually out there in
Yeah,
terms of how these things might compare in a broad strokes basis, just
even
because
more
there's so many
mainstream
goddamn measurements out
publications
there.
are doing it too. So
Yeah. But I also think, with the increased importance of frequency response in our discourse, and that itself being a piece of content that people are waiting for and are hyped for. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen people ask for your Susvara unveiled measurements. Um,
yeah, I mean that's
I
it's
mean
gonna
they
be a
don't
bit
they
for
don't
that.
exist,
Yeah,
but
you've seen them.
I've seen something. But I think what that does is, yes, they are more well informed, but they're also a bit more skeptical and a bit less quick to just put down the money based on someone else's impression, because there is now another factor other than someone else's impression.
Now,
Um,
is that because of the circles that we, tread in, or because like HeadFi hasn't really changed? It's this. I mean, maybe there's more additional influence there now, which is helpful, but it's still
you could
just
absolutely be right. I do
it's
not spend much time on it.
yeah. I mean, like I was disregarding some of the things that they were saying recently about your work. I was thinking more along the lines of like what Blaine said in the last stream that we did, which I think is a very relevant thing, where basically like people just take people's reports at face value, and they treat it as like facts about a product that is true
Yeah.
because a person who owns the product is saying these things and not
Yeah.
thinking necessarily what is their frame of reference, what is their
Mhm.
preference, what are you know. I mean, this is disregarding the whole question of like people having skill issues. I just mean like if you think about it, like what are the chances that a random person on HeadFi has the same preferences that you do? I would say
Right.
like the exact same preferences. I'd say it's
Yeah,
probably
like
not that
like a
high.
HeadFi user, I don't think is doing that internal calculus as
No.
deeply as someone who's like a graph sniffer, who's
Well,
like who's
yeah,
like on the Discord servers and like
yeah,
constantly surrounded by this stuff, and
yeah. I,
as a
I
result, I think are maybe a little bit too skeptical of other people's impressions.
well, I worry more about like if you think about like the largest group, right? So like we peer outside of our niche, we peer outside of the Discord, we even peer outside to a certain extent at HeadFi. If you look at sort of the largest group of potential audio consumers, um, they're being confronted with things with information that does not contain the kind of context that's required to properly judge if something is for them.
Mhm.
And an example might be they'll go to ratings and they'll just look at the score,
Yeah,
and then that's the whatever it says there, right? And they're going to make all kinds of mistakes as a result of this when it comes to what's actually going to be good for them. Or if they go to a certain website called Audio Science Review and they say, oh, it's got science in the name, that means it must be good, not recognizing that it's like, again, that's the top of the
results vary.
iceberg. Yeah. So it's like there's yes, it's true. There is now more information out there for people to have a secondary kind of like sanity check, which is a good thing, right? Like even if you're just
Absolutely.
taking the rating stuff or like the Harman checklist review stuff, it's like at the very least, it's good if people are considering an additional thing than just some person said it's good, right? I hate the whole fucking trust me bro aspect of this hobby, and I'm so glad that we're past that now. um
Yeah, yeah. There's an extent to which I'm very
yeah.
over that,
Yeah,
and over the kind of something that comes with that, which is uh, some listeners who have more time in the hobby having more quote unquote experience,
yeah.
and as a result having like a more trusted impression. Like I don't necessarily agree with that as a concept, because no matter how you know good they are at paying attention to the music. They might just have different anatomy to you. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing to guarantee that even the most trustworthy conveyor of impressions is anywhere near what you're going to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I do. There's also two other things that I've just been sort of like popped into my head when it comes to like
Sure.
the mainstream audio consumers. One of them is, I mean, as much as we lament some of the errors that happen with like reviewer targets and Squiglink and some of the issues there, the fact that that headphone measurements are way more accessible now, like for people to actually do that,
Yeah.
Bad Seed Tech is now doing headphone measurements.
Yeah.
You know, we sold him one of our rigs, and
Shouts out to Bad Seed Tech.
yeah, shout out to Bad Seed Tech, and it's so good that he's doing it, right? He's got a bigger
Yeah, and
audience.
honestly, also shouts out to Gadgetry Tech,
And Gadgetry
who
Tech,
like
yeah,
is kind of
getting into the
similar, but
gaming
like
stuff, you know, yeah,
it is so refreshing to know that there is someone in the gaming space who like
yeah,
cares
yeah,
about not being wrong
and
about that stuff.
and that's where I think, I mean, there's a lot of eyes that a lot of that audience, right? Like we maybe don't speak quite as much to the gaming audience, but like that audience is the audience that's massive, especially
Yeah,
like here on
huge.
YouTube. Like, and they're going to be seeing, you know, Joe's videos, and they're going to learn things as a result, and I think that's fantastic. So, so that's definitely a positive outcome. Um, and but the other thing I was going to say is used to be, well, yeah, so two things. It used to be there was a lot of trust me bro in that specific space where it was like, oh yeah, these
Sure.
headphones are like this, trust me about it, right? Or whatever. And like it could be talking out their ass. The other is people would be focusing on sound demos. And I say
Mm.
this with all apologies to people who are my friends who are in this space who do sound demos.
Oh,
Um,
I make no apologies.
yeah, no, I'm just like the reality is that like there is now, I mean, there's still a compelling factor to sound demos. I mean, this is what Mary didn't know all over again. But the problem is that they're not getting the actual sound of the headphone, and they don't realize that, right?
Sure.
But I do think there is, as a result of an increased awareness of headphone measurements, there is now a bit more sort of pushback against some of the sound demos that you see out there being done.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, so it's no longer just, I mean, in a way, it's like this is the easiest thing to do for people, and now people are realizing,
It
wait, this
is.
is not, you know, you need something. Even if you are going to produce sound demo, you need something a little bit more. And whether this contributes to a resistance to buying things, like again in the mainstream, I don't know how many people aren't going to be buying Sony WH-1000 XM4s and XM5s. You know, like I don't know how much scrutiny there is for frequency response, EQ, or any of that kind of stuff, goodness of sound quality, when what they care about is ultimately ANC quality and features.
And comfort.
Not, yeah. So like in a way, it's like we're not even talking about that. We're not even considering that
Yeah.
as far as like is there more consumption, right?
Right, but those are also things that I feel like the hobby, like the audiophile hobby, like has purported not to care much about.
Yes.
Like the ANC, the features, the comfort, like
Yeah.
the stuff that actual like normal consumers, like the people without the brainworms, do care about.
Yeah.
Like the audiophile hobby has historically at least kind of been happy to be contrary to, and like just focus on the sound and the story, I
Mhm.
guess, if we want to call that a metric. Um, but I do think measurements existing have kind of altered that balance a little bit and brought one skepticism to a lot of the sonic impressions out there, but also as a result has maybe kind of shifted the overall balance more towards a healthy middle instead of just being focused on sound quality.
Yeah, actually, Hobby Talk brings up a good point here as well, though. The fact that the APP2 is out there is actually a good, like it's a bit scary. It should be scary for the audiophile industry because it's so good. On the flip
Yeah.
side, it's also it's making people so much more aware of the fact that their quality can be so much better than what they might be used to. You know, like
Yeah.
it's
I watched this video from you ever hear of Mr. Who's Boss? He's like a big tech tuber.
no.
It was just like an offhand comment, like he was talking about one of his like everyday carry something. He was talking about a custom pair of Apple AirPods Pro 2 that he has.
Yeah.
And he was saying, it's nothing like an audiophile reproduction, but it's nice on the go. And it was just so funny to me that like, what someone outside the bubble would think of as audiophile reproduction. The people inside the bubble are all using APP2. Like all of the people I know who like use IEMs outside, like maybe like 80% of them are using AirPods Pro 2.
They are the audiophiles TWS. If you know what good sound quality is and you care about it,
it's either that or the Buds 2 Pro, depending on what treble you like.
Depending which category you're in, if you're in Lorho Gang or if you're in Harman Gang.
Yeah.
And technically, there's an element of Lorho Gang in Harman. As Blaine was saying, it's the same goddamn thing, just done differently. But I was going to say something else, though, about... Oh, yeah, what you just said about how the people outside, they build their assumptions about these products not from how they actually perform, but from the other things that they're associated with. Like brand and form factor, function, that kind of stuff, like TWS and ANC not being in the same category as like, well-performing headphones. But I think a bigger one there is even like it's Apple, right? Like Apple's never been, for anything that they do, considered, the thing that is going to appeal to the niche crowd. It's the thing that's supposed to appeal to the broadest group, right? And that doesn't like, we know that they've been able to produce something exceptional even for the niche crowd, right? But like it's people make their judgments about this based on those other factors. And I will say, so the reason I wanted to bring that up is it reminds me so much of, even within our niche, this happens all the goddamn time. It happens. So, okay, Bayer Dynamic. Why do people use these? It's because there's, I shouldn't say all, because maybe there's one that's okay, but like there's this trajectory of, these headphones are made for studios, so then everybody who is doing music production goes and buys them, and then it just sort of perpetuates this concept. And if you look at like actually how those products perform, and again I leave the question to be an open one. Maybe people are actually finding it useful, but like I don't understand why anybody would want that significant of a coloration if they are trying to use headphones as a reference point for music. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, Pro Audio is...
I would use this 10 times out of 10 over any of the Bayer Dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, look, Pro Audio is just as susceptible to the same issues that a lot of the audiophile consumer base are.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of like, we think we have snake oil in this hobby. Like, Pro Audio is crazy.
Oh yeah.
In that regard. And I want to be clear, like a lot of the stuff that people use in Pro Audio that is like very expensive gear for very minor changes, or like even like arguably imperceptible changes, those are still fine, and in my opinion like a little bit more excusable than in audiophile reproduction, because like, making music is like a creative process, and anything that assists in getting a better product is probably okay, even if it's expensive. The label's paying for all that anyway.
I mean, I'm just thinking though, like, so DMS has a video on this channel that is very critical of the DT990, right? And there's a lot of people who hated that video, right? They hated that he was dunking on it, and he was dunking on it for totally reasonable. He was justified in it because you could see the frequency response. It's bonkers, and but so many people who didn't like his video, there were two reasons. One was because they were coming from the gaming audience, right? Because there was some gamer who recommended them, and then it sort of took off, right?
And the others were the people saying it's a studio headphone. You don't understand.
And in both cases, I think to myself, okay, but like, did you actually consider what the performance is of the product?
No, they didn't. Like, I was trying to be nice about it, but studio people do not really know anything about headphone reproduction. Like, I was a studio person, and I didn't know anything until I dabbled into this hobby.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how speakers worked. I didn't know how headphones worked. Didn't know how IEMs worked. Didn't know how they were different, if that mattered. I quite literally would just find the most authoritative voice I could find and listen to them.
Yeah. And if
Which
something said pro on the
is
box,
very much how that space works, even outside of products.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to like the methodology of how you work, like that is very much how the pro audio world works, where there are these, Grammy winners who have credibility because of the projects they've worked on, and a lot of people will just use their workflows and methodology, maybe not permanently, but they'll try them out for like way longer than you would expect without being really critical about why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know, it's very strange to look back at pro audio as someone who's been in this space for a while now and see just how lacking in actual information the space as a whole is.
Right. Would you, out of curiosity, would you ever use an HD 800S for like uneq'd?
For mixing?
Yeah.
No, I would use it for editing. But like, if my EQ is in any way correct, it has like 10 to 12 dB too much treble in one spot.
Yeah, it does.
And like that's not useful at all for gauging anything. But like if I'm looking for like mouth clicks and like annoying breathing or like lisps, and
but
like I'll use it for de-essing. But
well, so I mean, I can't speak to what it'd be like on the pro audio side of things, but like when I'm editing a video, there are tools that do this for me where I don't need to even consider how it actually sounds. Like there's de-essers, declickers, like there's all kinds of stuff that I can just throw on and I don't need to even worry about it.
Do you use Isotope RX7?
Yes. Isotope RX8, whatever.
Oh, okay. I haven't updated my plugins in quite a while.
There are actually certain functions that Audition is more useful for.
Yeah, so I've only used Audition on. The stock plugins are surprisingly good.
So if you ever have audio that has clipping in it, like that you can't, like clipping is basically an unfixable thing, right? You can improve it, but you can't make it like completely. Is there a way?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends.
Say there's heavy clipping, like where it's like.
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on how well you have modeled the behavior of that system. So there are softwares where if you model the entire non-behavior of a system, which you can do with enough computing power, you can undo distortion. It's just very labor cost and computing power intensive.
So say you're not going to do that. So Isotope actually has a really good declipper, but there's times when even Isotope can't fix the issues, right?
Of course.
So what you can do is you can actually you can take the declipper thing that you've done in Isotope, you can then pop it back into Audition and run its declicker, and it will register it as a click, and then it'll reduce the fatiguing elements. I've done that in so many videos, and you can't tell that there's any clipping going on, even though it was like heavily clipped. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it definitely doesn't sound as good as if you just didn't have the clipping, right? But like,
sure.
There are ways that you can use those in conjunction with one another where it can actually be super useful. Resolve never clips. I clip all the time, and I need to get a better setup.
You definitely clip all the time.
Yeah. I get excited, and then I get all yelly and stuff, and then it's clippy. Anyways, next topic, last topic, topics of the week.
Yeah, was there anything you saw that was interesting?
Mainly I saw there was someone roasting you on HeadFi about compensated or calibrated graphs or something.
Yeah. So background. It was a gentleman who goes by Dharman Astartes. He has a Medium site called Bedrock Reviews. Amazing pictures, pretty reasonable reviews too.
Mm-hmm.
But he does not like the whole diffuse field calibrated measurements preference bounds thing, apparently. And he seemed very dissatisfied with how I present these things.
Yes. So the bigger topic in my mind, because that's just, I mean, it's not the first time that he's brought this up. The bigger topic is, in my view, there's a So clone rigs are a lot more accessible than, official Gross or, B&K systems.
Mhm.
Like they're significantly more accessible. They are
Mhm.
many orders of magnitude less expensive. And as a result, there are now there's a chorus of voices that are promoting and propping up clone rigs and their value. And basically but they're of course 711, right? For now, like maybe Crin's 4.3 system, a clone thing might change that, right? But like for now, the game is that the clone rigs are 711, and
Are the most accessible game in town.
and so there is, as a result, a chorus of voices that are anti new thing because it's outside of the realm of possibility for them, and so are resistant to certain ideas that have come out of the research that's been done with the new systems. Like, for example, I don't know if in this case if this person was resistant to that particular element, but like I've seen it where basically they'll denigrate the more expensive rig, or like the things the ones I see. It's like we talk about how, like, you can actually measure a difference between BA bass and DD bass tangibly because of the more accurate acoustic impedance on the 5 and 2/8 and stuff like that. And they will say, well, that's not true, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you dig deeper, you realize that a lot of that comes from the fact that that there's a concern about the invalidation of their equipment. And I think the there's a bit of there's a lot of misconception there, but what people should also realize is that just because there are newer, fancier equipment, there's newer, fancier things that can do these, that can actually show that have the more accurate acoustic impedance and can show the differences. That doesn't mean that the other rigs are invalidated, and it doesn't mean that the clone, the ubiquitous nature of these clone rigs is not a massively beneficial thing, in total, right?
Yeah. No.
And so
Like, as a web of things,
Yeah.
Squiglink is
Yeah.
immensely valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you look at like what the, say, even specifically for IEM measurements, right? And like we obviously tend to, based on what we've been able to demonstrate with the 5 and 2/8, and even in that video that I did on how IEMs are worse, we showed
Objectively
that
worse.
we showed objectively worse, of course. We showed that difference between, I think it was the DD bass and the BA bass, and
Hexa
how they
and the
would,
Meteor.
yeah. And we'll do a whole video on this that shows it more clearly and in more examples, right? But if you're somebody who has a clone rig, the outcome there shouldn't be my clone rig is invalidated, I think, right? I wanted to make that point, that I never spoke to this person at all, but I think there's a concern about that sort of like invalidation concept because it's not a newer thing, and I just want to kind of reiterate, like, that doesn't make it doesn't make the result that you get here invalid. It just means that there's like, okay, an asterisk about, let's say, below 200 hertz acoustic impedance related bass stuff, and even in that scenario, if you know what type of driver it is, if it's vented, if we're talking about DD versus BA, if you know what that is, you can also give a sense of confidence about how that thing measures, even on 711. So that's kind of the point.
You can gauge the confidence based on your own knowledge and relay that to you.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So
you should be doing.
This is not the fact that that new technology exists. It's kind of crazy actually think about it, but like in this space, does not invalidate all the good stuff that's happening on the older systems, and what we're doing with the new stuff, like for example, the showing calibrated measurements and being able to compare across different rigs, is a project that does not invalidate a clone coupler or the projects that people are embarking on as far as their own stuff.
Measuring on one head against Harman.
Yeah, like we're trying to do
still
something
totally useful to do that.
Yeah, like, and what we're trying to do with this, it's the comparison project, right? To have multiple different heads, be able to compare them with the same baseline, right? And have all of that. And it's like, if you view it through that lens, I don't understand what there is to get upset about, if you know what I mean. So, but some people are upset.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Mr. Super's in chat
Um,
now.
what's up? Yeah, he's been in chat for a while, and I do want to shout him for shouting out the new Maria's album called
You
Submarine.
roboted out like crazy. I don't think he got any of that.
Want to shout out Super because he shouted out the new Maria's album called Submarine. It's excellent.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Oh.
That and the new Charlie XCX have been what I've been listening to a lot.
Let's get into spicy hour here, guys. So drop them peppers. I just want to close the loop on that last little thing we were talking about a little bit. About Natalia Keene says, I find it funny that folks are so resistant about this sort of thing when it's commonly pointed out that the clone 711s are rough over 8K. Interestingly, if you use the DFHRTF of the KB5000, which is available, there's a clone version that you could use for this. There's a scenario where it could be still useful above 8 kilohertz. It's and actually let me know what your thoughts are on this, because I had this debate on Headfi, where a guy was saying, if you're using, say, an RIO 402 or even the RIO 401, information above 10K is still useful. And I was saying, the issue is not that the information won't change up there. It's that the acoustic impedance isn't accurate for the system. But I want to get your take. Do you think that so like right now, for example, we have the KB5000 or KB5X whatever DFHRTF, and actually in the Sysvara thread on our forum, I posted the results relative to Tilted DF, Harman, and then Harman High Res, which is basically the DFHRTF with the Harman filters applied. And you can see in that target, you can see the fine-grained features in the treble above 8K. You can see, what we previously would have said, oh yeah, there's a dip there relative to Harman that's supposed to be there. You can see why it's supposed to be there, because that's what the HRTF does. There's an element of that work, basically, that I think salvages some of the utility moving forward of the 711 systems. But I want to get your take on the acoustic impedance side of this as well.
Well, I would cautiously actually agree that characterizing the total contributions of the head, the ear simulator, as a sum total in a diffuse field head-related transfer function does actually potentially increase the usability of stuff above K for headphones.
Yeah.
And maybe for over ears or for in ears, I would have to. It's tougher because we don't have any human data for in ears really, whereas like phones we have a smidge of like blocked canal measurements. And my only basis for this is really that when it comes to the KB5000 systems in particular, I find a hell of a lot of congruence above 8K with that head in particular.
For you,
like with the for me, and it's like it's as evident as any feature in any other part of the R alignment. Like all of the Hi-Fi Man headphones have a massive peak around 11K.
I'll see if I can actually show
this. And if you look at the Hi-Fi Man against that head,
I wanted to show that one.
It dips in the HRTF and peaks in the response of the headphones, such that it's just unbearable for me, and probably for that head if they could talk.
Let me see if I can find this, because I spent a bunch of time EQing this. But if you were just using, Harman 2018, it would just look like, oh yeah, there's a dip at 9K. That dip's supposed to be there, and then that would be the end of the conversation.
And then there's like a little bit of a peak at 11K.
Yeah, but the reality is it's a lot more than just that. Let me just I gotta share my screen here. Yeah. Oh, it'll be. I won't be able to put it to Discord. I'll share it on the thing, on the stream, so you'll see what.
Do you need me to share my screen?
No, I got it here.
Okay. Yeah, the issue is that like you have to be experienced enough to know how a head correlates in this insanely personal area.
Yeah.
Like you have to have gone down the rabbit hole significantly deep to where you are very confident in what features are probably either going to exist in your HRTF or in the average HPTF across multiple headphones.
Yeah. And there's no guarantee that this is going to work for everybody the way it works for you, because actually even for me it doesn't quite, like I was going back and forth and it wasn't quite
you
right.
had better results with 5128.
That's right. Yeah. Which is confirmed with the in-ear mic blocked canal mic stuff as well, that for me the features track a bit more similarly, but yeah, that's still the next project I gotta wrap my head around.
Yeah. I just don't think framing it as acoustic impedance is necessarily what you do, because it's not necessarily about
so the reason why
the
I was
relationship between pressure and velocity of air. It's more so about just HPTF, HRTF kind of unknown bubble that all of us are in, where we don't really know how these factors can be quantified for us as individuals.
The only reason why I even brought that up, though, was because the language that Gross used for the RAO 402 specifically was that the information would be readable up to 20 kilohertz. Not that it was necessarily accurate. It was something to do with that. I need to double check what the language is actually around.
I mean, so
I might be misquoting them.
The thing is, even with a clone 711, you can get pretty usable results above 8 kilohertz if you do things like account for length.
Right.
Like, it's not that it's perfect.
I suppose the question would be, the issue that we found in the bass, right? Would some of that propagate higher up? And that's where I don't know the answer, right? I don't know, like the 5128 is meant to be more accurate at low and high frequencies, but
it is.
But like, are we talking about
the issue? Then is accurate to what and against what target, right? Or against what calibration or whatever. Like, the only reason I can say I get usable 8K is because the target I use is based on a direct delta calculation between the results on 5128 and 711.
Right.
So, like, because generally my rig makes the length more similar to 5128, really the only difference I'm getting is below 1,000 hertz.
Right.
So I can have more confidence in it, but I've contrived a scenario this coupler can perform like that.
So what you're saying is
that most people are going to do.
If people are upset about the moving to the 4.3 standard, they should just start using Delta.
Well, they should start using Delta and 3.3, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
okay, so let me just show I want to show the over ear results here for this Svara, because this is something that people probably should know about. So
do you mean the blocked canal stuff or the?
No, this is the DFHRTF stuff and the high res Harman. I mean, I'm calling it that because I don't know what else to call it. So Harman is smooth to 1/3 or 1/2. Is it 1/2?
1/2.
I think over ear is 1/2. Yeah. And that would look like this, right? This is Svara relative to that. And you see the dip here at like 9 kilohertz. And traditionally we would have said, this is supposed to be there. The rest of the response.
Can you click it to make it bigger? All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, the rest of the response is fine.
I didn't see the click.
You got a delay there, yeah. And we would say, the rest of the response here is fine. And that's supposed to be there. So we then had Oratory 1990 he went to the facility that I say the facility. I don't remember.
It was a university.
Called. Yeah. Basically, he went and he produced something that we were able to calculate a diffuse field head related transfer function for. Now, was it the full KEMAR that he used, or was it a KB5000 based Gross system?
It was a KEMAR with a KB5000.
KB5000. Yeah.
KEMAR is the head that the Gross ears.
Yeah. So it's a full mannequin with the KB5000 pin. And we were able to calculate from that the diffuse field head related transfer function, which is this, but this is tilted by 10 dB, right? So this is DF plus tilt for the Gross systems that use the KB5000. And you can see that actually, relative to the HRTF, the dip isn't just at 9K. It extends all the way up to like 11, 12K. And relative to this HRTF, the Svara has significantly excess energy, like 10 to 12K, right? Or I don't know what we want to say.
And that's how I hear it.
And that's how and people who would find this find this as far as fatiguing in the treble, it's likely to be there, right? It's likely to be somewhere in that range. It could be,
There's likely to be something.
yeah,
I mean,
there
so
could be some other ones lower down as well, but at the very
this
least,
is just one head.
yeah, and at the very least, this is one example where it shows that there's a significant amount of excess energy relative to that HRTF. Now I want to, that's also tilted 10 dB, right? So now I want to show you that same DF-HRTF with the Harman filters applied. So this is 2018 filters, so you have the bass boost, you have the 3 kilohertz adjustment, and you also have the treble adjustment. And it does look different. Like, this isn't exactly equivalent to Harman because the DF-HRTF baseline is not identical to the Harman in-room, but it's very close. And so even if you're saying, okay, this say we went back to Harman 2018 and said, okay, the result here is pretty good. There's the dip there that you'd see at 9K. Apart from that, the response is pretty solid. But then if you look at the high-res HRTF version of this, which is, as we just explained, the DF-HRTF with the Harman filters applied, it's still considerably excess treble at 10, 11, 12K for this headphone. And so it's these types of things that in my view, massively increase the utility of, I don't know about massively, but significantly increase the utility of the older 711 systems for over-ear headphones at least. When we're kind of like we're not saying like, oh, in order to do this high-res stuff, it's required that you use a B&K 5 and 2.8, right? That applies to, or 4620, right? That applies to the older stuff too now, and that's the whole point of the compatibility project.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I don't think the issue is that the tools become less useful. I think our analysis just needs to mature as we start analyzing with a wider lens on how many heads we're looking at and all the data we're looking at. We can more aptly get an idea of how things will differ for actual users.
Indeed. Okay, we got some spicy peppers. There are some folks.
I do want to say to people, if it's a cold take, put the frozen face. I'm seeing too many spicy peppers on takes.
Yeah, show impressions are largely biased to more flavored tunings. Should be taken with a grain of salt. All show impressions should be taken with a grain of salt.
That should be a frozen face.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
There's another one here. I think most people don't know what their own tastes are and brain burn themselves into liking Harman.
That's a fair take.
It's an interesting take. I hadn't really thought about brain burning yourself into liking Harman. I think there's probably that's probably true for a lot of people, especially in the IEM space.
I would say it's equally likely for headphone people. Like, I think a lot of
but
I see a lot of people on Reddit like buying an HE400 SE.
Okay, what do you think about this? I don't know if this is a cold take or a hot take, but I feel that for over-ear headphones, so like Harman is, if you think about Harman, it is actually based on an HRTF. Like at its core, it's based on an HRTF. And
it's based on a Hertz measurement of a flat speaker.
Yes, but
Oratory would say it's not an HRTF.
It's not an HRTF, but it's like you can trace its trajectory there, and if you put an HRTF there for the over-ear result, it'll kind of fit within it. It'll be a little bit spikier in the 3K, but you get what I mean, right? Like, it'll kind of fit. I don't think that the IEM research fits quite as well. I could be wrong about this. I want to get your take, but I feel like an HRTF.
So 2016 was based on the same.
It was, but the end result that we have now.
Yeah. Because they added that 5K bump in 2017.
Yeah. Which still, but anyways, like if you placed an HRTF there, it would match closer with the over-ear result than it would with the in-ear result.
Untilted, there might be the argument that the untilted DF would fit better into the IEM target.
Untilted, maybe, but we already know nobody likes that. So,
I mean, if you add a 10 dB bass boost, a lot of people do.
And that's kind of what they did, right? So there you go. But okay, so I had a slightly different. It's not exactly a spicy take, but it's a spicy topic. It's the spicy take from Zeos that Soma is referencing here. I'm not sure if you saw this, but graph/measurements go against his belief system for audio. Measurements don't tell you anything about how a headphone/IEM will sound. So I should...
Yeah, I mean, Zeos is just wrong.
Yeah, he's just wrong. But like, I should just pull up the quote from him so I'm quoting him correctly because it was a big, long thing about it. Okay. Oh. So he says... okay. it goes, yeah. Measurements go against my belief system for audio. Measurements don't tell anyone what they are going to experience on a headphone or an IEM or on a car. The end users, you and me, don't stand to gain nearly enough insight from a squiggly line recorded by someone on whatever test rig they have, and after applying whatever filter they decide to smooth it. I don't know why that's part of it. It is almost as subjective as listening to some a-hole YouTuber describe music, only with a complete dispassion and emptiness. That's me.
That's you.
Like asking AI to review a movie and bestow a numerical value. Leave the graphs to the engineers doing the testing and make technical corrections, and please don't make purchasing decisions based on one. Wait for the humans to tell you all about it. So
like, I'll take some of that. I'll leave some of that.
Yeah. So I said it's. He was saying this is his opinion about graphs. I said it's the wrong opinion. That's fine. But where I got to middle ground with him on this was I do think that it's that people shouldn't make purchase decisions just on the graph.
Absolutely.
You know,
because he's right in the first section about how like a single line on a screen is not going to tell you very much.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you're not someone who has already participated in or yourself built the context that is required to unpack a squiggly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like how do we feel about the take in general though? Very obviously it's the wrong, it's wrong. Like the idea that it doesn't tell you anything about how an IEM sounds or how a headphone sounds is just flat out wrong. It tells you the majority of, it doesn't tell you necessarily if you're going to like it or how.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you if you're going to like it, and it doesn't tell you how you're going to pack it. So like it might show with very good consistency in terms of how your response relates to the human, what's happening in like the mid range, for example. But it doesn't really tell you like how you're going to unpack that, because there are plenty of other factors. We are getting a little bit further into the in situ response web than I wanted to be.
We don't have to. I mean, to me, there's more of like a. It's funny because when I hang out with Cios, I've actually talked to him multiple times about like, hey, do you want to use headphone measurements? Like, we can provide you them if you want, right?
Yeah, he just doesn't want to.
He's just not interested. I mean, and another one, I was like, hey, do you want, like, we can improve your sound demos. Do you want to? And he's just not interested. So like he genuinely is. Where I think he's going with this, and again, this is me trying to steel man because this could just be a wrong take for wrong take reasons. But the steel man here is that there's a difference. There's a categorical difference between a subjective experience and a report of that experience and a visual interpretation based on measurements of that. And yeah, I think that's true. Like there's a it's the same thing, like, you know, I mean, this gets into philosophy and I apologize, but if you go back far enough, there used to be this debate about like the mind body problem, where basically you had like physical things, extended things, body stuff, and then you had mental things, right? And there was no way to really reconcile them. But then, like, you know, fast forward to the future, they figured out that actually, like, the mental stuff is just physical stuff if you analyze it correctly. And if you can analyze it that way. But then people would kind of turn around and say, well, yeah, but that does not explain they call it the phenomenal character of their experiences, or the, you know, it's representational content that they're experiencing mentally. Mental content is representational content, and the phenomenal character of that content is somehow unique and not the same as if you were to, like, you know, probe someone's brain. And it's true. Like, so there is still this like access divide epistemologically, and I think he is focusing very hard on the phenomenal character side of things,
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing he's saying. Basically, there's value in expressing that. There's value in reporting that because it gives you a better sense of how this experience is going to be. Because ultimately, that's what we're engaging in when we're listening to music. We're engaging in the phenomenal character of the experience, and we're not engaging with the fucking graph sniffing elements. Like we don't put a headphone on and go, oh my god, it's amazing at 3K. Most people don't. Right? Like we might be doing that, but most people don't.
Yeah.
So I do think, so again, this is me steel manning, but I do think that that's right. I do think that it's right that, you can't, you certainly can't easily bridge the gap between the physical acoustic stuff and its representational mental content.
Yeah, the event and the perception of the event.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Mark says balanced cables for IEMs are an absolute waste of time. Legitimate chance of something worse than better. So I absolutely agree on the first point. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the second point.
Hold
Can
on, let
you
me see if I
clarify?
can. Legitimately much more chance of making sound worse than better. Is it because of using it from a balanced source can have a higher noise floor?
I don't know.
You know what
While we
annoys
wait
me
for-
is that like
Oh, what's up?
most IEMs these days, like high-end IEMs, almost all of them come with by default a Pentacon, a cable
Dude,
that is
I
with a
hate
fixed
it.
fucking Pentacon, and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
so when I was sent
I
Megafy
hate you.
DST by Tam, it came with the white whale cable 4.4 on the end, and I was like, fuck, can I not listen to this? And like luckily he included an adapter in the box, but yeah, man, I gotta say, like 3.5 or die.
3.5 or die. I agree. Pentacons are nice, but they're annoying to use.
It's a
Because
nicer connector.
Yeah,
It
that's what I
just
mean.
no one uses it except for DAP manufacturers.
Yeah.
DAP.
I mean,
Um,
maybe if more amps had Pentacon, but it's just like most amps are still, quarter inch or XLR.
I mean, IEMs just also don't need the power.
No, they
Like
don't.
it
Like,
just
what is the point? I never understood that. But
there
it's
isn't one.
cleaner with more black background, Like, that's what they used to say,
Halt.
right? Yeah.
The Horrors asked on this topic. I'm really sorry for asking, being obnoxious with all the questions. You aren't being obnoxious. Is there a way to access measurements that were done by you guys? No, but this is actually something I wanted to talk about in the topics, but I missed when we were talking about topics of the week.
Oh, the EQ stuff. Yeah.
Yes. I have started a thread on our forum, which there should be a link in the video description somewhere to our forum somewhere. If not, it's just forum.headphones.com. It's called the headphones.com EQ repository and request thread. And the conceit of the thread is that anyone can go in and request an EQ, and I will, to the best of my ability, gather as many data points from different heads as I can if it's a headphone. And I will average them and deliver an EQ that should be a roughly Harman-ish, safe, easy to listen to result. But instead of just using the rig that Harman, well, not the rig that Harman used, but the rig that Oratory and Resolve and Crin have used alongside Harman's 2018 curve, instead of doing that, taking data in from all the heads and then tuning them to something akin to that.
Yeah, and specifically the Harman 2018.
Yeah, in the neighborhood. So
in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Under 3K, that is when I.
Yeah.
Above 3K, I'm really just trying to keep bounds.
Like there's certain examples where something is bonkers about, like, with a massive peak. I'm thinking of like the DT 1990 measures great.
Especially between different heads. So
Yeah.
like the problem is, like, I try to get it. All of the heads are like I'll mainly EQ the average, but I'll have the other ones up too, and have the EQ changing all of the results on every head and trying to balance
it
the
out.
spread of variation above K. So it's really hard.
Yeah.
But so, like I do think it'll result in a better,
and it's also like with the caveat or asterisk that like this.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, I didn't answer his question. We don't have a measurement database yet, actually.
So you cut out there for a second. So we have a measurement database. It is not public yet.
You were saying?
No, just that the for any of the EQ stuff, the asterisk is set like, oh, for a lot of this, it's like a starting point, not necessarily a
Yeah.
finishing point.
Yeah.
'Cause you
So
have to
what I
personalize
I
it.
do kind of what oratory does, and I'll prescribe bands to adjust if you want a specific
Yep.
change.
And they're
So
not
like
as
adjust band 2 for
they're
bass
generally
line.
not as specific as the ones that I do, because the ones that I do are just based on one unit. Because a lot of the time there's unit variation as a factor, and also the HPTF is a factor. So different measurements from different rigs at different units. It's a wider band, a wider spread of the shotgun, basically.
Yeah.
There's another Pepper thing. Okay, the pursuit of neutrality can lose some of the fun of esoterica, even if a neutral IEM/headphone can be better as a daily driver. I kind of agree. I like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about that earlier in the stream.
Yeah, the whole. No, well, I would kind of add to this though. Like, there is the only reason why I think people put like the concept of neutral on a pedestal is because it is demonstrated. The research says basically that this is likely to be preferred by people, right? And if you're going to like think about it in a vacuum, right? Like if you have just like any headphone measurement, like what are you going to anchor that to? Well, it may as well be the thing that is shown to be most preferred by most people. But that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be preferred by you or any, individual person. And so
Sure.
that's the thing that we kind of need to recognize, right? But I would agree that it's created this like inertia of, it must be this, it must be neutral in order for it to be good or preferred by anybody, and that's just not true. Like, I mean, a great example is the ZMF Caldera closed, where it's like, yeah, I mean, there are probably people who aren't going to like it, but it sounds fucking great. It's a great I think it's a, like wonderful sounding thing. I enjoyed it a lot, and it's like it didn't need to be this perfectly neutral thing for me to have enjoyed it.
Sure. Also, Mark says, I think this is about the 4.4 thing. Let me introduce inconvenience that actually makes things sound worse, in quotes. What does that say about audiophiles? It says everything about audiophiles.
Waifu equals good IEM. Yeah, that's a spicy take. Down with waifus.
I mean, by the numbers, I don't know that it's spicy.
That's true, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Let's see what else.
I'm not seeing much more spice.
I mean, like the whole thing about like inconvenience. I mean, the inconvenience and the expense. It's, as the traditional audiophile meme goes, it certainly has carried forward in many different ways, right?
Yeah, and it certainly does still motivate people to buy.
There is an element of, like, again, like, whoa, my power just went out.
How are you still connected?
I don't know, but my power is out because maybe my computer's plugged into a battery backup. But it's not beeping.
Okay, but what about your router?
This is really weird. Are we still here? What?
I
what
mean,
is no.
Yeah.
My power legitimately went out. My light's off. My AC's off.
Do you think it was just the breaker in your room?
Could be the breaker in my room, yeah.
That's so funny, dude. This is a first. This is a first for the stream.
It is. It does smell like burning electronics.
Oh wait, that's not good.
So, but I'm thinking it could be my Yeah, no, it's not the power in my whole place. It's just my the breaker has something has blown.
Oh, do you want to take a second, fix it, or do you think we should?
I think this is a good. Well, let's just address this one. Soundstage is a myth. Yes. in the most succinct, broadest, shortest description, yes, soundstage is not a real thing. It is an illusion that is present as a result of things being in stereo.
Agreed.
No, actually,
it can be more real. It's just not usually an audiophile product.
It's an illusion that people enjoy, though. It's fine if people are into that. But it is itself an illusion. I think Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner said something. His phrasing for this was way better than what I've just said, but it was basically the same thing. That like when you're hearing stereo recordings, you're hearing different things placed in the mix, you know, wherever they're placed. That's in the recording, and if you're doing any sort of like enhancement of that, that is an illusory effect as a result of, you know, something.
Rizal spent his monthly electricity budget on waifu. Yes, he did, actually.
Yeah.
That's clearly why this is happening.
Yeah. With all your measurements and thoughts going into the audiophile topic, shouldn't you be the next Harman target in terms of making sound accessible for
I mean, we'd
consumer-oriented
love to be
companies?
if you guys want to fund the studies.
Yeah, that's actually a big thing that, like, I mean, we have a lot of projects that we want to do, but they take funding, right? Like, it's expensive to do this stuff. As I say this in the dark, my fucking power goes. It's expensive to do the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, a lot of it is sort of like, you know, like we can't just do it. Even Harman didn't do this just for research purposes. It was a marketing. It had marketing.
Yes, it was a means to an end, and the end was
well, I shouldn't
selling
say just marketing.
products.
It's just like it's like it's market research, right? And there was a very clear path to ROI for them, and I think it's actually resulted really positively for them over a long period of time, right? Because everybody sort of talks about it, even in our space, right? So beyond the very tangible, you know, ROI that, you know, goes into their products, but also, you know, there's the sort of the emergence of the fact of discussion around that, you know, that's resulted from it being public. So but yeah, I mean, like, here's the other thing, like, if anything, I would almost want to work with Sean Olive on stuff, you know, like, I wouldn't say that it's like the next Harman target. Like, to me, it's like that research is foundational. And
yeah, I feel like everyone on our team would actually work very well with someone who is like very much so an empiricist. Like I feel like the same way about
look at you using philosophy language.
Well, I mean, it's just very clear with Sean. Like you know, but like I feel like oratory is much the same way, where, you know, they're very much about what has been recorded and shown. Oh wait, how are you light now?
This is just my camera. I've just turned up the ISO.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah,
yeah, but I feel that way about oratory too. Like I would want to work with someone who's a little bit more minded toward, the empirical side. To rein in some of our not less scientific, but less scientific impulses.
But I mean, that's here's the
you
thing.
You need
with
both,
that.
though.
Yeah, you do, and I was gonna say as well, like, I'm fascinated by the outcomes of the scientific process. I'm less. Basically, if you're going to embark on any of that, you have to take yourself out of the equation, right? Like, you have to kind of like abstract away your own, basically yourself from that, and that's great. I love that from the outcomes, but like, it's not very fun for me. So like, if I'm going into it to try like to be like, okay, what's a great experience, I'm less concerned about doing that. I'm more thinking, how can I harness, like, how is this, you know, related to what my experience is, and that's, you know, the communication or the guiding through process of it all. But yeah, we would love to do more. I mean, we have right now, so this coming week, we're doing research on the 5128. I would say, I don't know if anybody else who's doing, Sean's the only other person I'm aware of who's doing the getting the canal transfer function of the 5128. We have his results, but they were with inferior microphones, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've already done some of that. We have an outlier result, so we're going to double check that and figure out what's actually going on. But yeah, like we are doing some of these things behind the scenes, but it's not as you know, comprehensive or all encompassing as what Sean's already done for, you know, the Harman works. So I would say, actually, if anybody is likely to do that, it's someone like Critical, because I know he wants to he wants to run a study for IEMs that disproves Harman IE. We've sort of talked about that on the stream in the past, but anyways, I think, is there anything else that we should? The waifu target, get out.
Everyone's just talking about waifus, so
don't
I
know
think
why.
it's probably a public service, the stream, right?
Yeah. All right. On that terrible disappointment, it's time to end. And big thanks to listener for joining. Of course, we will endeavor to bring him into the future to having non-robotic internet. That's like we talk about funding. We need funding for audio research, but we need funding for this man's internet to be functional too. And big shout outs to headphones.com for making all this possible. Once again, they provide the measurement rigs. This is all basically doable because of headphones.com. So big shout outs to everyone there. And if you guys are interested in any of what we're doing for what we talked about in this stream, definitely follow us on the forum. It's a good place to follow us, but also in our Discord. Do you link the Discord below?
I think so. If not,
Okay.
I will add it in chat.
Yeah, definitely check out our Discord. That's where a lot of the discussion takes place for this stuff too. Okay, have a good weekend, or rest of the weekend, everybody.
Later, y'all.